This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
All right, with that, I am going to call to order this meeting of the Easthampton Planning Board for Tuesday, February 7th, 2023. Is there anyone here who would like to speak to something that is not on the agenda? Time for people to talk about anything on the agenda, anything not on the agenda. All right, and as a reminder, we are recording the meeting. We are all present except Harry Schumann is appearing remotely. We got a few things to get to, preliminary items. So first item we have is planning board minutes for January 17th, 2023.
Reviewed them. I motion to approve the minutes for January 17th.
All right, voting to approve the minutes. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Harry, can I get a vote on the minutes?
Aye.
All right, and moving right along, we have a couple A&Rs. The first one is 99 Clark Street. Is there someone here to speak to that?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Welcome. Can I get you to go to the podium just so we get a...
Oh, here it is.
Please, thank you.
Thank you to the board. Larry Holmberg from Holmberg and Alvan Surveyors representing the applicant. This is, Ms. Harrington owns 2 tracts of land. One is the house lot known as 99 Clark Street. The other is an agricultural lot containing a little over 6 acres. As part of the estate planning, she's looking to make her existing driveway parking area part of the existing house lot. Again, this is all part of the estate planning end of it. And so we're looking to create parcel A as shown on the A&R of 7,735 square feet, which will eventually get attached to the house lot.
Any questions from planning board members?
No, frontage looks good, yes.
Yeah, planning department, any issues?
Yep. Motion to endorse the A&R for 99 Clark Street.
Second.
All right, voting to endorse the A&R. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining? All right, I will sign those and get them to you.
Whatever.
Are you on the next one too?
I'm on the next one.
All right, the next one is the A&R for 16 Lyman Street.
Again, just for the record, Larry Holmberg and Alvan Surveyors, were the applicant. This is sort of unique. The previous owner of these lots owned both of them, got them 10 years apart. The owner died and the parcels recently were sold to the applicant, Thomas Camp. She's looking to sell the vacant lot, which is lot 2 as shown on this plan. However, because of possible problems with the merger doctrine and the problems with that the house and shed as currently exist are too close to the original line, even though both lots are building lots, we wanted to adjust the lot line to make the house conforming to the current regulations. So we've added 3 feet to bump out the area next to the house and the shed. Go from there.
Planning board questions? And there's no issues planning with the frontage is the same and fine. Doesn't matter that it jogs out a little bit, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Harry, any questions?
No.
All right.
Motion to endorse the A&R for 16 Lyman Street. Second.
All right, voting to endorse the A&R for 16 Lyman Street. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining. All right.
I thank the board.
Thank you. All right, moving right along. We have our continued public hearing for Tasty Top Development LLC. So we've had a lot of public comment and submissions in the intervening time period, and I know the applicant has gotten a lot of that too. So I think what we'll do is we'll start off with an update on sort of how things have changed since we last saw you here. A chance for planning board questions and comments, and then we'll open it up as we group here tonight as well.
Good evening, board members. Luke Scholte with Borough Engineering. So
Can you speak in the mic, please?
sure thing.
Thank
The
you.
mic-
Is this
The
on
mic
at all?
doesn't really
It
amplify.
does a little bit.
Okay. Do my best. So since our last meeting in December, we've worked to address all comments that we've received. We submitted a letter responding to comments from the Historical Commission. The Historical Commission met on January 11th and determined that no work was being done in any areas of historical significance. We also responded to a letter from the Easthampton Land Trust and another letter from Bob Parent. The traffic engineer has also performed additional traffic counts and provided an updated traffic study, which she can give you an update on here in a moment. I'll just give an overview of the plan improvements that we've made as a response to the comments we've received. We added more sidewalk connections throughout the site to allow for increased pedestrian safety and access. We added refuse container locations and bike racks outside of every single building. We developed photometric plans for the entire site. They've been included in the revised plan set. 2 EV charging stations were added outside of every multifamily unit. We also added chain link fencing to the plans around all the stormwater basins that are in the area of multifamily buildings. The location of the remnants of the Hampshire and Hamden Canal are now shown on the plans. These remnants are located outside the limit of any post work. The number of parking spaces was significantly reduced throughout the site. These areas where the parking spaces were removed will remain green space, but they're called out on the plans as potential future parking. But they will remain green space unless there is a need for them. 2 of the multifamily buildings were moved 15 to 20 feet further away from the top of bank, abutting the Easthampton Land Trust, which just increased the undisturbed open space because it moved it closer in to itself. We were able to do this because we were able to remove some of the parking spaces. The phasing plan was revised to show which parts of the stormwater management system would be completed in which phases, as well as the phasing of the sanitary sewer system. There are also some modifications to the stormwater management system as a result of comments from the Conservation Commission. None of those revisions resulted in any major changes to the layout of the site. I'll take any questions you guys may have.
Planning board members want to ask questions now or hear more information about anything? We can listen to the traffic engineer. How do you want to
Was the entrance revised to be in line with the road across the street? That was one of the items that we talked about last time.
No, it was not.
Is there a reason for that?
I'll let Frank Meredith speak to that.
Hello, my name is Frank Marinus. I'm president of Taste Adapt Development. No, it's not. It hasn't been moved to align with that. It's a private, it's not a real private way. Actually, the property line, I believe, is in the center of that right away, and it's undetermined who owns that piece. And it's not, by moving the entrance there, it's actually makes a worse traffic condition because it's pushing it closer to Starbucks. And we asked our traffic engineer to look at that and make recommendations, and they did in the revised report saying it's properly located where it is. It's like placing an intersection across from a driveway. It's not necessary work required. There's more traffic counts that are going to come out of Starbucks than there is out of that paper street. You know? So no, we didn't move it, and we're advised by our traffic engineers not to.
And pages to show some of the modifications to parking that have been pointed out on the map.
Is it possible to put the new plans up and show everyone what changes have happened?
Sure.
Sure.
they're gonna do the paper version, and I'm gonna have Eli pull up the site plan at least on the virtual call. It may not be exactly in line with what you're doing, but we'll try to give it the picture.
Yeah, I could just go off the virtual.
Okay.
Plan, so.
Go back here to speak, so people in,
Yeah.
at home, and then maybe have someone point where you're,
Old fashioned way.
yeah.
Are you gonna pull it up, Eli?
Point it out.
So if you can talk into the microphone, because the microphone records it people at home and for the recording, so we still need
This microphone.
another one at the podium.
No, it is.
It is.
Oh, it is that. I'm sorry.
Get confused.
Changing technology.
That's all.
Yeah, I can barely see it from here, but. Is it anybody I can pull it up on here and point to here, or?
Try to point to it, Luke.
Okay. So there's several locations, down there. There's a block of parking spaces that was just made basically a big green island.
So that's 16.
That's kind of easy to see on the color plan.
Yeah.
And then there's a couple, 2 lanes of parking in that area. It's also made green space. And then that big chunk in the middle of that parking lot was made a green space. And then several parking spaces were taken away all along where the multifamily area is.
But so just to be clear, you're asking for permission to treat those as parking spaces if you need them, right? You're not.
Well, we would come back in the future, and we're just leaving space for them to become parking spaces if the demand required it.
Okay, but
So we were just showing where the parking spaces would be in the future.
in the event you needed to come back and modify the special permit.
Correct.
What's the total amount of spaces that you've moved?
We reduced the parking by 169 spaces.
Leaving how many?
At the request of the zoning and plan.
Yep.
I don't know the number, the final count off the top of my head. Brian, maybe we'll get it off the plans.
Roughly 560
Okay.
site-wide.
And then you said you were able to move some of the buildings away from the slope, is that right?
Yeah, he's pointing to the 2 buildings that we're calling building 4 and 5. We're moved away from the steeper slopes.
And in the plans, that between those 2 buildings and in other areas of the plans, there's a line with a circle. Is that a fence that's in between those 2 buildings, kind of at an? Yeah, and there are those fences. That's the chain link fence you're mentioning.
Yeah, because there's between the buildings and a couple locations, there's the detention basins.
Okay.
So one of the comments was requesting fencing, suggesting fencing be around the basins near the multifamily units. So that's what we did.
That was helpful for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Visual learner.
Just a quick question about the trash pickup. Now, there's going to be multi-use units and residential units. Is it going to be one vendor picking up all the trash from all of these places, or are they going to individually, these businesses individually?
It would be one vendor.
One vendor?
It's possible that there'll be one for the residential, one for the commercial, so maybe 2 at the most.
Okay.
And there was a comment, I think a letter from the fire department about the need for new piping and supply for water for fire services. I don't think that was contradictory to what you had originally expected, right? That needed to come in off of Colonial Avenue and expand the pipe there.
Correct.
Okay.
Is it okay if you expand on that? I just want
Yes.
to make sure I'm understanding correctly. I think I read in there that it was 6-inch and there was recommendation that that was insufficient. Are you saying that in phase 1, you're going to be replacing that, or like when?
I think that it was, the fire department wanted to replace by the time I think we hit phase 3. We could finish phase 1 and phase 2 and by phase 3. But there's some state funding or federal funding grants that this project will actually help the town get the grants to be able to upgrade that whole line from what's, from
West Street down to Abishai.
Yeah,
So that will be upgraded in phase 3,
prior to.
prior to.
Right.
Thank you. That's,
And if that's infrastructure on the whole site, does it make sense to do that all before you do the other work anyway? Is that,
That's offsite.
offsite. That's within Route 10.
okay, but I thought, isn't there gonna be like a loop or whatever piping on site that comes off of the Colonial Lab line?
That will be put in at phase 1 up to the requirements that it will always meet. So that will be oversized essentially. That'll be 8-inch line along the whole property.
And so the Route 10 project we're talking about is this hopefully state tips project that may or may not happen, but we hope. Okay. Jeff?
Well, I don't want to cut off Member Hartman. I would just say, you mentioned the TIP project, so the TIP project is Transportation Improvement Project, and that's a DOT initiated discussion that's more surface improvements. The underground would be something along the lines of MassWorks, which the city has done well pairing up with projects. But that's the strategy that we'd be discussing. I think in theory, the condition of the approval would be that water line will be improved before phase 3. And it's something that the city, the mayor's office, DPW, and the planning department would all be working towards trying to get the grant funding to support that. It's been identified by DPW for about a year.
Right.
That the system's undersized on Route 10. So, with or without this project, that is a problem that Easthampton has in terms of an undersized stretch. So at some point, the city will need to be upgrading that line. And so the strategy would be to get grant money so that taxpayers don't have to pay for that.
the only question I have that kind of remains in that you touched on a little that there would be a collaboration with the city, but the condition would need to state in some way, not just that it's upgraded, but that it was upgraded to a sufficient point. Like there's got to be some stipulation as to what that point is.
Correct. And I think as this process unfolds farther, I think, that language would get sussed out. But yeah, it would have to be suitable to support the development of the phase 3. Like they could go to phase 3 and then by that point, the upgrade would need to be in place to continue.
No. Okay.
I have just a minor clarification. There's 2 8-unit mixed-use commercial units in the back. And last time you were here, you were mentioning that it's just for support of the project. It's just to support those aren't commercial units that you're going to rent out, right? Like in the back, there's 2 buildings that have apartments above it, and there's 2 small buildings in the back. Yeah, what are those? Is that the storage?
Ryan, do you want to answer that question?
Those are commercial units. They're for rent to like an electrician, a painter, a contractor shop. We would consider it.
During the construction?
No.
Constant.
Permanent, yeah.
Permanent to make the whole.
No, they're private contractors.
Private entities.
Store your stuff there before you go out and do your lawn care business. I think it's the business model.
Okay, I understand now.
Yeah, the chair said it perfectly. Landscapers, electricians, plumbers, they rent it out to get out of their own garage at home and kind of grow the business.
Understood. Okay, so it is a commercial situation. I misunderstood. I thought it was to support the whole, multi-phase project, but it's not.
There's a small shop in the community center that would have like a maintenance shop for the full-time maintenance.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we can probably dive in on traffic now, please.
Eli, could you try to give control to Carrie Pike?
Yeah.
Please.
Larry, are you on?
I am. I'm here.
You sure it's good?
So I can share, yes?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Let's see if this. All right, can everyone see that? You should just see a title slide.
Yes.
All right. So I'll just give some quick updates. We did submit an updated traffic study. In that study, we updated a number of things to respond to the comments from the planning board when we were here in December. Now my screen doesn't want to advance. So this is our study area, just to remind everyone. We did recount the intersections as well as do an ATR on Northampton Street. And we recounted for 3 days. So we got 3 days worth of data at both these locations. And so that data is included in the traffic study, the updated study. And just to give you an indication of what that data looked like. So compared to our 2021 ADT count, that's the tube counters on Route 10, the volume actually was lower in 2023 than it was in 2021. And we also had a bit of a slower speed in that data as well. So, and again, the detailed data are included in the appendix of the report for all of those counts. Then just to remind everyone, I know you've seen the site plan already, so we'll just skip over that. There were questions about the ITE generation data, the numbers of studies. So we've given a summary, and again, this is included in the report, the updated report, of what the ITE data contains for daily AM and PM for each of the land uses that we are using their data. We did also update the gymnastics studio to use data derived from the Roots Gymnastics Center in Westfield. So that's actually based on data from Roots themselves as opposed to an ITE land use code. And so those updated generation numbers are shown here. I think really the only one that changed was the gymnastics studio based on the empirical data from Roots as opposed to the ITE data. We also were asked to provide the numbers of trips by phase. And so this shows you on the top, the cumulative morning peak hour data. So phase 1 here on the left, and then phase 1 and 2, phase 1 through 3, and then the full build. And then the same thing for the PM peak hour. So those data just broken out by phase, so you can see how many trips as each phase would be built. And then finally, we were asked about mitigation for the 2 locations. And actually what we found was, so West Street in the build condition was performing an E and F. You can see those here in red. If we make some changes to the timing at that traffic signal, we can get those to improve to C and D. So that would be potentially a mitigation item. And then the site is, we're proposing in the full build condition to that the traffic signal be needed. That was when the warrants were met. And so this is, it says NA because it's not signalized. So this is a signalized summary, but the site driveway itself, as the phases go along, potentially could be level of service F. You might be waiting quite a bit to get out. But with the signal in place, you get level of service B in both cases. So that's just a quick summary of the build mitigated. I think that's my last slide. Yes.
Gary, was there any analysis done of the Florence Road light at that intersection for mitigation?
There was, I think we had some timing changes there too, but for some reason they didn't get onto my graphics. So let me check that and I can get back to you. I'll stop sharing so that I can see you all again.
So I feel as if more effort, more time, more than. Can you tell us the dates of the 3 days of testing?
Of the counts? Yes. So there was the January 4th, which was a Wednesday. And then we had January, I believe it was 17th and 18th.
You know, it's tough. There's a big community and we all, just about, well, at least I feel anecdotally that, you know, there's a problem on that street. There's a problem in that area. I've experienced it, especially coming out of Burger King. I feel as if there's a certain level of optimism in the traffic. But I also feel as if I'm being presented to gross science. And so I don't mean to accuse your work. I personally would feel better, and this is my opinion, is if there was a peer review of the traffic study. I think that would alleviate a lot of my concerns to get another professional view. And again, I don't mean to impugn your work.
I'm not insulted at all. That's sort of a standard practice when we do these kinds of reports, that completely understand that you want to have your own expert look at it. Makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. I mean, we have a draft vote for a request for proposals for a traffic expert. I think certainly based on discussions we had at the first meeting and some of the stuff we've seen, I think there may be just other things we can ask an expert if we're willing to retain them, and also have a second set of eyes on this. I mean, as you said, James, like this is a science and we're not trained in that, but I'm slightly skeptical of the conclusion that it's going to have minimal impact on the road, just traffic wise. But I don't know how other members feel about the idea of having a peer review for a traffic study.
I think it's the right thing to do.
Yeah,
I agree.
me too.
And I think you folks have had discussions with the planning department about this possibility as well, right?
I think it's in everybody's best interest.
Yeah, and to get it started as soon as possible. Okay, I guess this is as good a time as any to talk about the RFP that was prepared by the planning department for discussion. And I mean,
I heard kind of a question, and other than that, just a discrepancy I noticed on parking. In the actual report on page 19, it describes, or I guess for the person on the phone, how many spots are dedicated for each resident? Just out of curiosity. I know there was a reduction, but where are we at now? Is it 1 per unit, 1.5?
There's 1.5 spaces per residential unit site-wide.
Okay, then that is consistent with some of the information I have. I think we're good.
Okay. And Dan, did you have a chance to look at this RFP?
I did.
Draft? Okay. And I know you, amongst all of us, has a little more experience in this, so I'd certainly be interested if you had any comments or suggestions for.
I believe my comments are incorporated, but
Okay.
wouldn't mind hearing it again.
Okay. I mean, essentially what we're talking about is we would authorize the planning department to put out an RFP. The scope is described in here, and then authorize the planning department to select a person along with this timeline. The idea being completing the review by March 21st and attending a hearing that night. And then I think there would presumably be a bit of back and forth where they would be prepared to answer questions and talk about some of these things that we've sort of been stumbling over. Jeff, you want to add anything to that for sort of what's going on? I mean, you don't have to.
I think if I could, I think for the benefit of everybody, I will not read every word.
Yeah.
But it's available online in terms of the draft scope. Many of the things have come through in the previous discussions and through the public comments. But it includes kind of multiple requests. So it's evaluation and recommendations on the submitted data. And we're looking at kind of data quality. So does the submitted information accurately and adequately reflect current operational conditions, estimated potential future impacts to surrounding intersections, and accurately assess the signal warrants? So then there's a bunch of questions that we put in the scope to help inform that. The second is the data area. And so really the question was, is the current study area sufficient to establish current conditions and future impacts? And looking at the traffic dispersion out west in Florence Road, was that accurate? Would evaluation of a signal with signal hardware? And I had a couple minor changes. So there's and/or adjusted signal timing or dynamic modeling of the corridor. Is it warranted? So, this is the planning board's opportunity to ask the peer reviewer basically to review what's been submitted and provide some guidance to the planning board.
And so to be clear, Jeff, we're not asking this person to gather new data. We're asking them to look at the interpretation, but also to look at the process that was used and see if the process could be improved upon in some key way.
Correct. And then if the peer reviewer does think that additional data or measures are necessary, then the planning board would ask the applicant to consider that. And there's an agreement, so the applicant pays for this service, and we're required to solicit 3 cost estimates based on the scope. So that's kind of what's out there, outlined there. There are some other components for those who are really interested, but item number 2 is evaluation and recommendations on related to the link between this planning board land use permit and the Mass DOT has their own access permit process, and they have a design for all of Northampton Street in process. It's at the beginning. So we're asking the peer reviewer to provide the planning board with some guidance on the relationship. And there's some bulleted items listed. And then the third item is the evaluation and recommendations related to the proposed driveway alignment, including but not limited to. So the primary question is, whether it really is best for the planning board to be making that decision, or whether it would be something that Mass DOT would look at as part of their access permit. They have a hierarchy of process, of their review. And then how does that relate to the road design process, MEPA? And we are trying to offer the opportunity for the peer reviewer to consult with Mass DOT. And then the last item is guidance on potential approval with conditions, so that there's a way that if some of this decision-making goes to Mass DOT, that the planning board protects the city, that it would be at the right stage, something would happen. And then Jesse, I don't know if you want me to go through the timeline, but the goal would be the initial review by the peer reviewer would come back on March 21st. It may or may not be complete, but we wanted to act in good faith to at least take adequate steps to make this happen and get the peer reviewer on as quickly as possible. And then the last thing I thought would be worth mentioning is that we would be selecting the peer reviewer based on qualification. The applicant does have a decision whether to fund the selected peer reviewer. If they do not, then they can withdraw the permit application within 5 days, or they could appeal the decision to city council. So, we want to work cooperatively and get, we ask for a competitive price, fair proposal based on kind of the scope that we have laid out here.
Thank you.
Been through this process once before, out of here.
At least once, yeah. So they've done this, and I think it's helpful. I think it's pretty essential here to get a second set of eyes. So I guess I think we need a motion to approve the RFP and for you to be authorized to act in accordance with it.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah, I mean, the one thing I would,
The red line, with some red line items, and you'll need addressing. I mean, it looks like you're anticipating vote and in February, the next meeting. So a motion would include those dates, I think, yes.
Yeah. The one, I recognize that there are people online and people in the room, so I don't know if the board wants to hear public comment to potentially inform any of this, but other than that, I think we did ask, should the applicant be required to design and implement a control system that would coordinate and optimize the operations of all 3 signals? So that's one of the bigger red line items that's not in your draft that we added based on the city engineer's recommendation.
So a few small questions that maybe we're hearing out before the rest of the board reads the text there.
That sounds good.
Okay.
For Gary?
Yeah, just pretty minor,
Yeah.
but worth, I think, just getting an answer for it. So, Carrie, did you look at or do you anticipate any issues with the on-site queuing? I know you kind of mentioned that potential signal at the, well, actually, but any queuing on-site, especially at the peak, hours if a daycare gets let out, or the gymnastics studio, a class gets out and there's 30 parents there picking up their kids and they're all trapped on the site, and where would they kind of be directed on site, potentially now blocking other access egress ways throughout? Is that been evaluated at all? Or?
So, as far as the queuing goes, I mean, I think with the driveways as they're laid out, we can accommodate that. I mean, certainly I would say that something like, a gymnastics class getting out all at the same time and having a bunch of parents, is not really typical, but we typically don't, we don't design for kind of spot, things like that. But I would say that that queuing can all be accommodated with the layout that's on site.
You think you've got enough storage there to more or less adequately take on kind of peak?
Yes, and the driveway is meant to be 2 lanes, a left lane and a right lane. So, necessary.
The egress way at the main intersection with Route 10. Just
correct. Correct.
Okay. I guess in addition to that, kind of sort of related, we talk a lot about peak hours, and I think the report's assuming all of the peak hours for the multitude of uses are all occurring at the same time. Now, again, I know there's going to be schedules for daycare. There's people living there that make certain trips that are probably more consistent with what we all consider our peak hours. There's restaurants that maybe have different peak hour. There's, gymnastics and several, right, based on class schedules. Was there any consideration or evaluation of all of these staggered peaks?
So the ITE data actually considers that in the gigantic, I mean, it's literally 2 huge volumes of all the data that they have what's called a peak of the roadway. And they have the calculation of the trip rate for a peak of the roadway usually for morning and afternoon. And then they also have a peak of the generator. So those things can be different, as you say. So we use the peak of the roadway.
And is that a more or less conservative approach than peak of the generator?
It depends on the land use.
Do you think you took a more or less conservative approach when you evaluated the trip gen?
I mean, I would say it's probably in the middle, because there are probably a couple of land uses where they may have a more intensive time frame, maybe in the middle of the day as opposed to in the morning or afternoon. Although most of the uses that we have here, typically they tend to be higher in the afternoon, like in that afternoon rush hour. There may be some uses, like, for example, you might have a restaurant that is open for lunch and dinner, but not for breakfast. So it's not going to generate any morning trips, for example. Maybe a few from employees coming to start prepping or things like that. So I would say it's kind of in the middle, not super conservative, but not unconservative. If that's a word either.
I get it. Yeah. And now can we might as well touch on the signal again? Has there been any change to that? I believe, and this is just off memory, it was potentially going to be a signal installed in phase 3. Is that still the case?
That it needs warrants in phase 3. That is still subject to MassDOT's access permit. So, and I would say, we'll have worked that out with them, but it met 2 of the 3 warrants that MassDOT likes to see in phase 3, and it met all 3 of them in phase 4. So some of the timing is subject to discussion with them.
And you don't feel with engineering judgment that it should be installed in earlier phases?
Well, we do, but I can't tell you what MassDOT's going to tell us, because I have had projects where they have said, no, you can't install the signal yet.
So for the public, it's up to MassDOT essentially is going to has the control over the signal installation and not the developer. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, because they have to issue, I mean, we can want it, but then show that it's warranted, but they're the ones that have to issue the permit to allow us to actually put it in.
Okay, thank you. And let's see, 2 more things. Your traffic dispersion, I believe you used the census data from figure 7, which showed the majority of traffic going northbound taking Florence Road, surprisingly, over Route 10. is that what your traffic projection models for 2030 also used? Because I believe your traffic count data shows the opposite, if I interpreted it correctly.
Meaning if you looked at a gravity model instead of the census data?
Well, your actual splits and turning movements from your counts show the majority of traffic taking Route 10 and not taking a left or right into Florence Road. But the vehicle trip distribution, I believe it's page 24, shows 60% on Route 10 and 23% on Florence Road. So that just looks like a discrepancy, but if you have
Yeah, so that's based on, you know, who's traveling to this area now. Again, that's the census data, as you mentioned, and based on those particular census tracts in this area. So I think that would certainly be one of the things the peer reviewer will look at when you get to that, is they'll look at the distribution. It may be one of the items that we have a discussion about whether we should, you know, change that to be more of what I call a gravity model, which, as you say, you know, fewer people turning left than are going through on Route 10.
Yep, okay. And the last item, let's see. Oh, no, that's it. Sorry, that was a tease. That was it. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. I do think, so I want to limit this option for comments right here to just the issue of the peer review for traffic. I know that might be hard, but if anybody has any comments, I see a couple hands raised online, just about our decision on whether or not to seek a peer review. I would take that now. I see two people. I'm not sure. I see Beth Goodman and Keith Cernak online. I'm not sure if you want to speak about the peer review issue or if there's something else. I see Beth nodding. Beth, if you can unmute yourself, please. Oops.
Oh, shoot.
Keep her off the arm button. All right. How about Keith Cernak while we wait for Beth to come back? Careful with that button, Keith.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, this is not about the peer review or what you're going to go forth with.
Oh, hold on, Keith. Keith, all we're doing is peer review comment right now. We're going to have more public comment later, I promise. But
I'm muted now, sorry.
That's all right, Beth. All right, Keith, so if you hold on, we're going to get to other stuff and we're going to even have other meetings here, but I just want to do this one discrete issue in case there's comments related to our vote for a peer review on the traffic. All right, Beth.
I couldn't quite.
Thank you.
I couldn't quite hear you on the last part, Jeff.
Keith, so we're just doing comments at this very moment, just on the discrete issue of the vote on a peer review for the traffic study. So there's going to be other opportunities to talk about the bigger issues. I just want to try to do this to keep this issue moving forward so that we can wrap up the peer review on the traffic for now. So I'll give you a chance to talk later, but I just wanted to take comments at this moment just on the issue of the peer review. Okay?
No, and that's fine. I just want to, I'll just say one thing.
No, hold on, Keith, please wait. We're gonna get to that, I promise. But Beth, you got something on the peer review issue?
Yes, about the scope.
Excellent. Thank you, Beth. Proceed.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the planning board's making efforts to have a peer review. It is a very complicated and large project. My concern, I represent 102 Northampton Street LLC, and which owns property directly across from the proposed development on Mountain View Street. And I am concerned about the scope of the peer review to make sure that it will look at that issue, because the applicant has dismissed the concerns about traffic on Mountain View by saying it's not a street. It is a driveway, and I disagree with that self-serving conclusion. And I want to make sure that the scope of the peer review is sufficient to point out that error, if the peer reviewer agrees. There are 25 lots accessing Mountain View Street. It is not a driveway.
Yeah, so Beth, I mean, I certainly thought that that would be something that we would be able to ask the peer reviewer about anyway, as far as like the mitigation. I'm looking at language in here. It does,
While you look, I can give Beth a little more info. So they will also have to apply for an access permit through the state, Beth, and the state engineers do look at that. So there will be.
I understand that, but I'm concerned about this traffic report where on page 17, they say, for safety reasons, we're not going to look at the intersection control between Mountain View Street and the proposed driveway. And I don't want that to be ignored because they've said it's a driveway. It's not a driveway.
So Beth, what I was looking at for this, I think it covers it, is on page 4, paragraph 3C. Comment, and this is under evaluation recommendations related to the proposed driveway alignment, including but not limited to.
For the RFP.
Yeah, this is the RFP for it.
Okay.
The proposed driveway location in reference to existing land uses and potential for significant development of nearby properties. I would certainly think that gives the scope. I mean, it's certainly one of the things that's on my list for things to ask a peer reviewer after they've looked at all of this.
Okay. So as long as it's pointed out and that's clear and you're sure the scope includes it, that's the big issue for my client. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just on the peer review? Come on down. Name and address, please.
Sam Nelson, 25 Highland Ave. So I would urge the board to refer to the data that you already have. This was litigated in 2010 to 2013. Stop and Shop was proposed. DOT determined that the road needed to be widened by 15 feet and that a traffic light must be installed. Also, refer you to the advertisement when the Courtney family was trying to sell the property. The advertisement did state that it had an exposure of 15,000 cars a day.
Thank you.
I think is the board really willing to enact eminent domain to widen the road? Because you have some structures that are quite close to the road.
I think that's like 5 or 6 steps down the road from what we're talking about. It's all state issue anyways. But so I think what we're looking for here is to get another expert in the room who can look at this with a fresh set.
I'm just saying that you already have data from 23 years ago.
Yeah,
13 years ago.
Different project and over a decade ago.
Different project, but I would also, say to you that traffic's a little bit worse now than it was then.
I'm hoping to get an expert to tell us that. Thank you, though. Okay, any other comments about the issue of the peer review? We have one more here. One more online. Deborah August.
Yes, hi.
Hi.
Deborah August, 21 Groveland Street. So I am a conservation commissioner, so any questions or comments I make are strictly on my own. Because I do live on Groveland, it seems that all the streets from Groveland down to West Street are being ignored as far as traffic. It's very hard times of the day to get in, to get out. I have sat for 10 minutes or more just to get into my street. So I really am for the peer review and have them take into consideration the lower streets from Groveland down, and also the this driveway that's coming up diagonally from Groveland, how that will work, a signal, a crosswalk, anything that they can glean from that. And that would be great to include all of us, because it'll make it harder for us to get in and out. So
that is part of the scope. So that should get covered by a peer review, and they should be able to give us guidance on that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And I saw Scott. Scott, you can unmute yourself.
Yes, I just did. Hi, how are you?
Hi, how are you?
Do I need to state my name and?
Your name and address, please.
I'm representing 102 or my home address.
That's fine. 102 Northampton Street.
Yes, correct. So I definitely want them to, the peer review to look into our traffic count, the amount of customers we see coming off this coming off of Mountain View that we have to use. Because per the planning board back then, we had to use this as an exit for our retail store. And we see a very good amount of customers, especially through the weekend. And it's a large volume of customers.
Great. I think that should all get captured by the peer review, so that's good to know. Thank you, Kyle.
You're welcome.
Any other comments on the peer review? Yes, please come up to the podium. Name and address, sir.
I will be brief. My name is Rick Cernak, 100 Northampton Street, Easthampton. Greetings. Thank you for inviting, or thank you for having this. Just very quickly, why wouldn't you have a peer review? Rhetorical question. This is a huge project. I am directly across the street from, I used to look out my office window and see Tasty Top there. Not anymore, but I see where Tasty Top was. So I'm directly affected. I also have the only business property that is improved on Mountain View Street. And this is such a large proposal, and I'm not against it, but I am against the way it's set up here with the entry. The peer review is extremely important in something this large. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So seeing nothing else, I think that we need a motion to, before we.
Can I just make sure that all of our red lines are squared away? Do we have those squared away?
Well, so I think the comments are just, I mean, when the planning department prepared this, it was at a draft, so it assumed that we would vote on this.
Yeah, if I push forward or vote on to receive the traffic peer review, but there's no datum that you need added in.
I think ideally there's two minor changes. Under 1B, there's the last line is so it takes away and it just says adjusted signal timing, comma, or dynamic modeling of the corridor be warranted. So it added one more question for the peer review to consider, which is whether the dynamic modeling is required. So that was in 1B. And then 1C is after the word predicted traffic conditions, adding a semicolon. Should the applicant be required to design and implement a control system that would coordinate and optimize the operations of all three signals? And those are the only changes that we added based on that input from the city engineer. I think all the other elements that I just identified are encapsulated into this agreement, unless the board has other changes.
Does this, Jeff, I've looked through it a couple times, but does it talks about the corridor, does it deal with on-site traffic, or whether that, I know that's not part of the scope of the study that they're reviewing, so I guess the question would be whether they think it should be part of the analysis. And parking is always
parking and parking as well. What about parking? I'm kind of curious what you mean by parking. I can add the other items.
Just validation on that, that it's, adequate both in quantity and the layout. Just validation. I know that the applicant worked hard to reduce them, so reduce the spaces. If they're going to do this much work on this, you might as well tie it all in. I think tie that piece in as well.
I mean, does that go, because then we're not peer reviewing anything, right? We're getting our own expert on the parking issue, which we can do, but I mean, it's a different process.
I mean, maybe they'll just say yes, so it's not the worst to stick it in there, but
this traffic engineering component part.
Yeah,
absolutely. Full handbook.
Yeah. Well, I think it does tie in with the on-site circulation stuff. So I guess that makes sense too, sort of the impact of on-site circulation and parking on and queuing on traffic. Yeah. Okay. That works for me. That works for you? Yes.
Yes.
Harry, I don't want to forget about you online. Any comments or questions on this part?
No.
Before I make this one more thing, you've made a couple of noted changes. Is the applicant favorable?
Any issues with the changes we've talked about here? No. Okay.
I motion to proceed with the request for proposal of a traffic peer review for these.
I'll second.
All right. We're going to proceed with the RFP for traffic peer review. All those in favor?
Aye.
Can we add in a vote to authorize the planning department to select to, I think that was, I just wanted to make sure
Yeah,
that
that
was
didn't
clear.
get in there either, so let's do it. Oh,
I'll
I've got a lot of planning department.
Do you want me to do a second?
Let's just do a second motion.
Yes.
Act in accordance with the RFP.
Rock and roll. I motion to allow the planning department to seek, give me some language here, Jeff. Seek what are you trying to do?
Election.
To make the selection of,
And coordinate with the traffic peer review.
my motion, yes.
You get all that?
Wordsmith that.
It's being recorded.
Yeah.
Well, what I would do, it's execute the agreement upon written consent of the applicant. That's what language you want. Yeah, it's in there. Yeah.
I'll second that. I'll second that.
All right, voting on the second motion to allow the planning department to proceed under the RFP. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Harry. Okay, so that is one issue that we needed to work on. Yes, Jack.
Just again, for members of the public, for informational purposes, the goal of the peer review is to have the information, at least initially, coming back to a meeting on March 21st at the regularly scheduled board meeting. So we would expect the peer reviewer to be present for that meeting with some kind of update, information, initial review, or possibly the whole review. But that's kind of written out as the next, for traffic, that'll be the after 7th, March 21st.
Okay.
Okay, we've got other things to do, but do people want to open this up for public comment, what we have so far? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Got this crowd here. All right, so if anybody has any comments, questions, you can feel free to comment on the traffic issue, although we sort of have set that aside to hash out more in March, but people are free to comment on that. It's obviously a big issue, so either online, you can raise your virtual hands, or in the raise your hand, or we could form a line by the podium, depending on what the interest is.
Chair, but I'd suggest that the number of people we have with it, we might want to keep it to like 5 minutes.
Yeah, I do think if we try to keep your comments under 5 minutes, and also I know there's a lot of people that have the same thoughts and concerns, and they're on our list, and so we don't need to keep coming up and saying the same stuff. To the extent you can sort of limit yourself to new issues or new aspects that we haven't heard from, that would be really helpful. So with that, anybody in the room can come and line up by the podium, and I will go back to Keith Cernak since I cut him off before online, and we can start when you start.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And this may be a little bit premature, given that you are going to do a traffic review, but I just want to give my comments. My name is Keith Cernak from 7 Groveland Street, Easthampton in Silicon Valley, California. I am the largest. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. I am the largest residential and commercial abutter directly across from this proposed mini city of Mr. DeMarinis, where all his traffic right now dumps right in front of me near Groveland Street. I'm also a homeowner on Groveland Street for over 30 years. The family's been there over 100 years. My father operated Cernak Buick for 80 years, right across from the site. When I look at the current Tasty Top development site plan, its access road in and out will be using all residential areas as its traffic dumpster site. No one from Groveland will be able to take a turn in either direction, nor the entire residential area down to West Street Light. Cars will be backed up going into the mini city without a light. It's absolutely dangerous. This is just not a small Starbucks, you guys are really, or a Burger King. It's a mini city with one access in and out. Seriously? As a homeowner on Groveland, I'm asking, where is the access and egress planning in all this? Is it Tasty Top Development's intent to create an environment in Easthampton where it could take 2 hours to go 2 miles? And something else you really need to consider, your medical care. It's a disaster to have your major artery gridlocked when emergency vehicles need to get through, especially in this age of COVID. I'm an epidemiologist and advisor to the World Health Organization. I've worked with hospitals and studied diseases all around the world. And you need to have quick access to hospitals. If you are from this residential area, do you really want to wait hours with your sick child or your sick elderly parent? In Tasty Top development, traffic gridlock to get to Cooley Dickinson or Bay State hospitals. Do you? Everyone who lives near or uses Northampton Street should be very alarmed at the Tasty Top development for their single, no traffic light access road that dumps all this mini city traffic right into residential. As the largest residential commercial abutter, I find this one access road with the no turn lights and the no light in and out of the mini city not only unacceptable, but incredibly irresponsible and dangerous. In 2009, Stop and Shop Development Plan, their VHB consultants concluded there should be a traffic light at Mountain View. Easthampton City consultants agree, and so did Mass Highway. In Stop and Shop's development plan, the consultant said this measure will provide safe and efficient access. So my question is, before we even do all this, and we have this access road, what is happening here? Is traffic less dangerous than 2009 when this was recommended by the city of Easthampton? I don't think so. Is there something going on here we don't know about? Delaying a traffic light that would provide a haven for both motorists accessing and pedestrians crossing is not something the city should even tolerate. We should demand more safety, and Easthampton should demand more. That the Mountain View intersection have a traffic light as recommended, and it aligns right in front of Tasty Top Development's mini city. Tasty Top can move its proposed residential traffic dumpster access road that's right in front of me, 100 feet north to meet Mountain View Street traffic light. And it all aligns with the city's original plan. And this is a light. It's a light where emergency vehicles can get through, traffic flows, and the crossing for pedestrians is safe. Don't settle for less than this. Demand it from Tasty Top Development now, or regret it forever. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And we'll go back and forth here. So we'll go on the podium. Please, name and address.
Good evening, Leslie Cernak, 100 Northampton Street, and the shop on Mountain View Street. Can I close this laptop? I just don't want to hit any buttons by accident.
No.
I cannot. Can I move it up here?
No.
Right.
It's recording.
Do you need custodian for?
No. I can move it. No. All right, please.
I just set up my paper.
No, Eli, is that recording?
So, yes, this is recording.
Yeah.
We need this for presentation.
Yeah.
It has to stay.
Yeah, can you please put it back on the podium?
Mike needs to go back there.
Yeah, that's all right. I'll just be careful not to press any buttons. Okay. I would like to start with sharing some letters from Cernak Fuel employees who were not able to be here today. One of them has submitted a letter.
If it's easier to save time, you can submit those to us too, because we're going to have more hearings on this. So I'm just trying to keep the 5 minutes if we can. So if you want to submit those to us, you can do that too.
We've received several letters that have been sent to the planning board.
Oh yeah, we have gotten some already.
From employees.
It was sent on Sunday and it's not up yet and I don't see it on the table. That's why I thought I would read it.
You're free to read it. That's fine if you'd like to.
Okay, all right. So this is from Kim Lyons, who is the office manager at Cernak Fuel.
We did get that email.
You did?
Yes.
Okay. In that case, in order to save time, I'll skip through this a little bit more. 2 letters that I think are well worth reading Kim Lyons, obviously, she is a resident in town. She has worked at Saranac Fuel since 2005. Her desk window looks right out at the Tasty Top property. So she's seen accidents, she's seen the changes in traffic. She's got really good comments. Just one thing here that I want to quote, and this has to do with the Saranac employees. She says, I want to mention the difficulty that the Saranac Fuel oil truck drivers are having when trying to enter onto Northampton Street from Mountain View Street. The oil trucks do not handle like cars. Trucks have a wider turning radius and they take more time to start and stop moving. I think it's a recipe for disaster to locate the Sierra Vista Commons driveway 100 feet away from Mountain View Street, especially since the project will be the source of significant increase to traffic on Northampton Street. So that's the letter from Kim Lyons. And there is another letter that has come in from Bill Hickey, and he is the corporate safety director. So not just for Saranac Fuel.
We got that letter as well.
But all of Hop Energy.
Yeah.
At any rate, he says something very similar that I'd just like to quote a section of what he has to say. The trucks are heavy commercial vehicles and they cannot enter intersections quickly, unlike a car. They cannot stop on a dime. Further, they carry liquid loads, which will shift the weight of the truck upon abrupt movement. Further down, he says, at Hop Energy, I take safety very seriously. As corporate safety director, I see the importance of advanced planning. Car and foot traffic will obviously increase significantly once Sierra Vista is operational. We do not want to wait for an accident to happen before addressing what could have been done to prevent it. So those were the two letters from the Saranac Fuel employees who couldn't be here. I'd like to talk a little bit about some inconsistencies that I found within the traffic study and some comparisons with the Stop and Shop traffic studies. Can I ask for the traffic impact study from January 31st to be posted on the screen?
Have that ability, Eli?
Yes. It'll take a couple nights.
Okay.
Okay, now, it's gonna bring up.
While you're pulling that up, I'll continue talking. From the December 20th meeting, Thorough Engineering introduced the project and the buildings that would be in place. And he mentioned that there would be 10 residences with 176 units, plus 2 mixed use with 26 units. You combine 176 with 26 units, I believe that's 202 units. Once Eli is able to pull up that traffic impact study, we'll notice from table 1 that the residential units, instead of 202, says 208. We'll also notice on page 22, table 8, that the multi-housing units are 232. So we've got some inconsistencies there. There are also some inconsistencies having to do with the square footage of space. From the table 1 chart, retail at 33,600. Moving to table 8, it's 30,000. The restaurants from table 1 are 11,000. The restaurants from table 8 are 10,000. There are also discrepancies on the appendix to the January 2nd memorandum, which I'm going to get my glasses, excuse me. Print's just a little bit too small. The warehouse in the first part of the chart says 14.8 cubic square feet. The next section says 15, and the next section says 15.
What page is on now?
So that is the appendix to the January 2nd memorandum.
Thank
And Eli, if you've got the the January 31st traffic study. I'm specifically referencing table 1, which is on page 1. And then table 8 is on page 22. I also did notice that there was a difference in daily trips with the January 31st traffic impact statement at 3974 versus 4,024 on the PowerPoint. But I think that was explained by Ms. Pike when she said that they adjusted numbers before this came. So those were my observations on that.
Thank you. Thank you.
I would like to talk about the project trip generation counts. And so yeah, we're not working with that 4024 number. We are working with the revised number
You got about 1 minute left.
Of 3974. I'm not saying that the development groups coordinated to influence the traffic, but I do think that the 5 phases of development, 1 for Starbucks and 4 for Sierra Vista, need to be viewed as a whole. Both projects are located on the Courtney property. Since the Starbucks traffic study was done before the Sierra Vista Commons study, Starbucks trip generation counts were incorporated into future condition traffic volumes. So in other words, they are not in the project trip generation. The whole package that we're talking about here, folks, for a project trip generation for Starbucks from their traffic study is 1,822 vehicles. Sierra Vista Commons is 3,974 for a combined project trip generation of 5,796. If I pull up the traffic report from Stop and Shop, it says right here on page 26, it can be seen in table 3 that this development is expected to generate approximately 4,578 total vehicle trips on a daily basis. 4,578 compared to this development of the 2 projects on the Courtney property is 5,796. That is a difference, an increase of 1,218 trips, or 26.6% above Stop and Shop. So you're following me here that this is really significant. I know my time is short. I'm just finishing up. A few other things that I just wanted to mention about the Stop and Shop study, and I've got a bunch of notes on this if anybody does want more input. But Stop and Shop did an extremely thorough analysis where they didn't just look at Highland Ave and Florence Road and the intersection of West Street and Northampton Street. They looked at all of the side streets. So those folks who are in the audience, they looked at O'Neill, Lyman, Groveland, Lawndale, Dragon, Colonial, West, Main, Pleasant, Highland, Florence. They even looked at peripheral intersections that this study is not looking at, but they really gave a good glance to Mountain View. A quick note on Mountain View, it is not paper street. There is a curb cut. There is a city water line. There is a city sewer. I pay real estate taxes for Northampton Street, and I'm not the only one. There are other parties that are on Northampton Street. The lots on Northampton Street, there are other properties that pay.
I gave you a couple extra minutes. We got to wrap it up, but and you can submit written comments. There's going to be more time for us to reach this. Whatever you sign up.
If anybody would like the traffic studies on for Stop and Shop, I have them available here for comparison.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Eli, I can't read the names for someone like.
Yep, definitely. All right, looks like Daniel Martineau is next.
Great.
Daniel Martineau, can you unmute yourself?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello. Yeah, my name is Danielle Martineau. I'm on 89 Northampton Street. I own the home that's right next to this parcel. I'm pretty indifferent to this. I mean, I'm very much in support of more housing, and I'm not opposed to this development at all. But I do have a lot of concerns about the traffic, which I feel like is being addressed appropriately. I do have to say, just from someone who lives on this street and who also walks a whole lot, I haven't been walking on this street lately because of how dangerous it is, especially on Tasty Top right now because of the construction. So I'm not quite sure if that skews anything with traffic studies. I don't know much about that, but I do want to say I know that a lot of people don't feel safe walking on that street right now because of the condition of the sidewalks, especially with the construction of Starbucks. And that really does impact a lot. So you probably don't see a lot of people walking on that street, but it's not for good. It's not because people don't want to. I would like to request some 3D renderings of the commercial space that will be going adjacent to my property. I'm just wondering if the owner could give some clear pictures of what it would look like from a 3D perspective. It just says a pad site, and I don't know what that looks like. And I couldn't see anything on the website, so I don't know if it was submitted, but I didn't see anything. And then I'm also wondering if the owner would be interested in possibly having some type of bike path or rail trail that's connecting the property to Pleasant Street. I know that there was a comment that was made in one of the letters, and they said that they were amenable to that suggestion. I don't know how feasible it is, but I really think that would solve a lot of the traffic issues, and that it would provide another way of transportation for folks. I know for me personally, I would rather walk or bike to get around. And I know a majority of people feel the same way just from the prices of gas right now. So I'm not sure if that obviously wouldn't solve a whole lot of the traffic issues, but I think it's worth considering. And I'm not sure if that could be talked about in the project. And yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair. So that might be worth just taking a second to note the grant and the future development the state's going to do in that area. The sidewalks.
Well, it's
dovetailing.
Yeah, I mean, it is part of that proposal.
Just by way of information.
Can you hear that, Danielle?
Yeah, I'm very much aware of the sidewalk, which I'm glad to hear about. But my point was, I'm not sure if that has anything to do with the traffic study. Like when the traffic study was going on, it mentioned that they didn't see a whole lot of pedestrians, and I was just saying, yeah.
Thank you. Okay.
Well, can we
sure.
Are 3D renderings that something you guys can do for the abutters, that they can see what they're?
I mean, the building next to our property is one of those potential pad sites where there would be a restaurant that would be in the last phase too. I mean, I don't know if the board would want us to, when we get to that point, we could at that point provide 3D renderings of it, like make it a condition that,
Do you not have any idea what it's going to look like?
No, I don't.
You don't have a town address.
That's why it's like site plan, so it's just, we're planning it out on the site right now.
Yeah.
The actual look of the building is undetermined right now.
Okay.
Is that something we can make as a condition, that the different phases, they come back and show us the next phase if anything's changed or what's new?
We could discuss that, yeah. Okay. Who's next in line here in the room? Hello.
Hi, Amanda Kallenbach, 5 West Lake Street. I think we're all over caffeinated if all those trips in and out of Starbucks. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you this evening. I'm here as a concerned resident of Easthampton and as a former Inland Wetlands Commissioner in Connecticut. The Sierra Vista Commons project under review is not just out of scale and character with its location. Its massive size would be detrimental to the environment, people, and wildlife in its vicinity. The project is located much too close to the surrounding wetlands, including the Manhan River. It has too much pavement and would destroy the integrity of the farmland where it's sited. Wayne Vyden and the Pascomic Land Trust have done an excellent job of highlighting, literally, the ways in which the current proposal doesn't align with the city's master plan and how it skirts zoning regulations or meets the most minimal requirements. Well documented by them in the City of Easthampton Planning current application docket 93.95.17 Northampton Street. The docket also contains a number of suggested alternative proposals that reduce the footprint of the project, better integrating it into the neighborhood and providing more contiguous open space without a significant net loss of housing units and commercial space. Even with a smaller footprint, the development will take years to build. Easthampton residents will have to live with traffic congestion and air and noise and light pollution for the duration. The traffic studies conducted minimize the trucks and heavy machinery that will be a constant presence. We'll be suffering with traffic backups, exhaust fumes, and construction noise for years. These factors aren't just a nuisance. They'll have lasting health impacts, especially for children who are susceptible to respiratory problems and adults who need clean air and quiet space to keep themselves sane. The project will also take a huge toll on wildlife that depend on safe, quiet habitat for survival. Developers try to assuage us with small mitigation efforts to lessen environmental impact, but you can't just throw down some seed, plant a few trees, and call it good. The project, as proposed, is not good, and its negative ripple effects will grow exponentially and last forever. I strongly urge you to deny this application and send Sierra Vista back to the drawing board. Have them come up with a scaled-down version of the project. Development happens, but ecologically sensitive development is a smarter and healthier way forward. As parents and grandparents, I hope you make a decision your families and the city can be proud of. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I see Patrick Chambers. You unmute?
Hi, sorry, it's actually Carrie Chambers. I am not technologically savvy enough to change my name. I'm at 17 Mockingbird Lane. I'm actually over in Westfield. I'm here to speak on behalf of Roots Learning Center, who is the proposed daycare for this development site. I have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, and both of my kids have been enrolled with daycare since we moved back to Westfield in January 2020. And I really am just here to speak to what an integral part of the Westfield community Roots is. I don't know a lot about the daycare scene in Easthampton, but I did a quick search and it doesn't look like there's a lot of center-based options, particularly for infants and toddlers. And if you're looking to retain business within your community, I think that this would be a great place to start. Daycare in general is pretty hard to come by these days. And we have been just extremely happy with Roots. They hold their teachers to a very high standard. They have gotten our children into I'm not sure if any of you are really familiar with the location of the Roots Learning Center in Westfield, but That's also where the Roots Gymnastics Center is. We have a dance center. There's an early intervention center, and there's a very large gym and aquatic center. And the daycare has gotten our children from an early age into gymnastics, into dance, into swim. It's a really excellent way to kind of get your children involved in the community from the beginning. Roots has also been excellent about giving back to the Westfield community. They just gave a very substantial donation to our local Westfield Amelia Park Children's Museum. And they really do strive to just kind of help our kids become a part of the community. So I definitely would urge you to, at least whatever way you proceed, to allow Roots to be a part of this. They've been an excellent part of the Westfield community.
Thank you.
Right.
All right, next up in the room.
I'm going to change the subject here a bit. Just a note, it would be interesting to see what a street view of this looks like when you're looking from the main road.
I'm sorry,
I want to talk about something different that
Sir,
I spoke about.
Can you just give us your name and address?
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Michael Garagian. I'm at 7 Fairfield Avenue. My wife and I own Carbon Star Systems, which is just completed building what's known as one of the most effective means to remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, which is a serious issue, but I'm not going to get into that because I don't want to scare everybody. We need to be thinking about this stuff. So years back, when I had more time to be involved with the city, I was sitting in a meeting with Stop and Shop in the conference room in the mayor's office. And I asked this question and they said yes on the spot. So adjacent and abutting your property is the Manhan River Dam. The Army Corps of Engineers did a study years back showing that dam has a flow of 254 cubic feet per second on average. Potential kilowatt hour output of that dam is 753,000 kilowatt hours. The report is in City Hall. Based on the U.S. Energy Information Center's calculations, we all produce, for every kilowatt hour of electricity we use, we produce 7.43 cubic feet of CO2. This dam can alleviate a total of 5,598,391 cubic feet of CO2 by generating that 753,000 kilowatt hours. So what I would ask and did ask Stop and Shop that I am now asking you, I know you can't respond, but would you be willing to sign a contract with the city to take all of the power that can be produced by that dam if the city should decide to do that? In your own use, that will reduce your footprint by close to 6 million cubic feet a year. Just to put that in terms that we might be able to understand easier, if you took a cubic foot box of CO2 and stacked all of those next to each other, they'd stretch from here to Jacksonville, Florida. If you packed them on top of each other, they would go 155 times farther out than the stratosphere of the Earth. So if you were to agree to take that electricity, you could produce income for the city of $250,000 per year in perpetuity at current carbon credit rates. Those rates are going to go up as the climate gets worse. As for you, yourselves, you would get some pretty significant tax credits for the same thing. So I'm asking you to accept or agree to take your electricity from that dam if the city would be willing to provide it. And possibly Sage could actually do some of the engineering work on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Nora Colby?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, Nora Colby. I'm not going to repeat a lot, but I am here in support along. So I'm very similar to what Carrie Chambers previously stated. Daycare.
Can you just give us your address for the record first, please?
Absolutely. It's 42 Willowbrook Lane, and that's in Westfield.
Thank you.
So again, I am in support of the project. In particular, I'm a parent with my son currently enrolled at the daycare on Root Road. I did hear a lot of comments in regard to the traffic. I will just say in particular for the daycare, there are times when I pick up, which is anywhere from 3:30 to 4:30, and I'm the only parent at that hour picking up. So there are times where there's maybe 3 other parents, but there isn't a massive influx in terms of traffic. And again, that's coming from a parent's opinion, not a professional study, but it's just what I see. In terms of the learning centers, though, they aren't just daycare facilities. They are community. They create an inclusive environment where children learn, grow, and thrive. The staff is always there to answer any questions I've had. And as you can imagine, transitioning your child to daycare is filled with many emotions, but seeing my son's happiness at Roots and also feeling the support from the teachers and staff reassures me every time that we made a decision in choosing Roots Learning Center. And I have no doubt in my mind that any projects Roots is associated with will add tremendous value to the community. Thank you. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you. All right, next in the room. Name and address, please.
Hello, my name is Fred Badall. My address is 280 West Franklin Street, Holyoke. And welcome from your neighboring city-state. The reason I'm here personally is because I love the Manhan River. And I think that the area down below this proposed development happens to be one of the most special wildlife places in our beautiful valley. And I would like to call your attention to anybody in the room, that certainly the planning department and the planning board, to the new biomap that the state of Massachusetts has put up on the web. They call it the future of conservation planning for Massachusetts, is to use this kind of overview of where our most critical natural resources are. And it turns out that the entire property here, this was only, I think there's been some iterations of this, but the most recent one was only put up maybe at the turn of the year. It's only been up about a month. Super cool. You can go through all these different tabs and layers and explanations for why they designated various places, various things. But this property area is a critical natural landscape. And you may or may not be aware of that because it just looks like it's just a field. It's just an old golf driving range. What does that matter? Well, it is a special place. And I won't go into the science of it, but there is, data layers you can go into to see that fact. And it is very, it is sad to hear about things like detention basins as the future of this critical natural landscape, even though I understand that a detention basin might help, but there is, it's a straight down slope shot to that river. And the stormwater, you guys are the experts, you're the professionals. I hope you can manage it. There's going to be tons of other impacts to that beautiful area. And unfortunately, the land trust only owns right up to the bank on the other side. So I think there's an opportunity and a need for some more protection around that resource. The second and final point I want to make is there's another great state map called Mass Mapper, where you can do all these cool layers about geology and physical resources and conservation and all kinds of things, parcels. It's really cool. But one of them is looking at soils. And the soils on this property are entirely either prime farmland soils or soils of statewide significance. Now, I happen to be in my day job, I'm a farmer. And I know about these things and I know how rare that kind of soil is. It's not built over. Actually, almost most of Easthampton was built on prime farmland soils, I'm sorry to say. And most of Westfield, and most of Agawam, most of Springfield, and now it'll be yet another part of Easthampton. And that, to me, that's my habitat. And, for people like me, we're losing our habitat. Thank you.
All right, Eli, I'm struggling to read again.
Yep, looks like Caitlin Rooks is next.
Hi there. My name is Caitlin Brooks, 189 College Highway. I really appreciate being able to listen in on this discussion tonight. And I know that there's a lot of different stakeholders who have a lot of different perspectives. So I also am here in support of Roots Learning Center. I live in Southampton and I used to work in West Springfield. My son is now 5 years and 4 months old. He has been in Roots since he was 12 weeks old, which now means that he's been in daycare full time for over 5 years. And I switched jobs from West Springfield and Westfield to Northampton, and I kept my son in daycare in Roots just to stay with that same organization because they do such a good job. My morning and evening commute is about 55 minutes because I was so committed to keeping my son in a consistent daycare, just so I could stay with Roots. I also want to acknowledge that I sit in the traffic between Westfield and Northampton twice a day, every single day. I see the challenges, but I also want to share Nora's perspective that I pick up and drop off my son at Roots twice a day. Sometimes my husband helps me out and some pick up and drop off, but there's usually 2 or 3 cars in the parking lot. There's never a crowd of people all picking up their children at the same time. I really feel like my son's also in swim classes and at the other Roots at Root Road and not in the Hampton Ponds Plaza. And there's usually 3 kids in the swimming class or 4 kids in the gymnastics classes. It's not huge crowds of people. And I really think that if you're going to commercially develop that area and add more housing, that childcare access is going to be incredibly important. It took me 6 months to be able to get a full-time daycare placement for my son who was 12 weeks old. And I applied when I was literally, I think, 3.5 months pregnant. There's not enough options. And if we want to continue developing both Southampton, Northampton, Easthampton, that area, it's really important that we make sure that childcare is accessible to parents who need to work to be able to afford living in this pretty expensive area. But I can't speak highly enough about Roots. Like I said, my son's been there for now 5 years, which is pretty much his entire childhood. And it would save me personally about 45 minutes of commuting each day, 45 minutes every day, twice a day, if there was a Roots Learning Center in Easthampton where I could bring my child. And I'll say that there was previous studies in Southampton where they determined that somewhere between 60 and 75% of the people who live in Southampton commute elsewhere to work. And it's either north or south, either you're going towards Springfield or you're going towards Northampton. And I really think that, providing additional opportunities for people to be able to put their kids in daycare is super vital.
Thank you. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next in the room.
Hi.
Hi. Name and address, please.
Do I sound okay? That was my level. All right, Shira Simon, owner and resident of 10 West Street and owner of 57 Northampton Street. I'm here to speak in favor of this project. Because until very recently, there was a lot of negativity going on. So I just want to say that as we all know, the city is growing both in number, opportunity, culture, and so on. And I think this is an amazing project with housing, which we desperately need in the city, including affordable housing. It has activities and restaurants and green space and open space and community activities. And it's developing Northampton Street, which as Cottage Street has been flourishing. Northampton Street got a Starbucks. So I just think that this is something that these people are offering things that our city desperately needs and would certainly benefit from. As these 3, I believe, Roots clients have said, Roots offers an amazing daycare learning experiences for children and teens and adults. I don't know, are there adults? No adults. Okay. I just I think after hearing from them at this meeting and at the previous 2 meetings that they have been pretty much in compliance with everything that we have asked for, with things like random comments from the crowd. They worked in today's presentation. So I think that the traffic issues, I don't think that they should be as much of a concern for you as some speakers have made them out to be. And I say this because of how wonderful I think that this facility can be. And I think that to make a decision to not approve this plan of an amazing facility and an opportunity for our city simply based on traffic implications would be disappointing, to say the least. Thanks.
Thank you. I see one more online there.
Yep, Jonah Tetro.
Good evening. I'm Jana Tatro, and I'm the chair of the Easthampton Affordable and Fair Housing Partnership, and I live at 52 Pomeroy Street. I'd like to talk tonight to address some of the comments that we've heard, both online and in written comments and spoken comments, about why do we need more development and how this project might change the character of Easthampton. As we've all seen in Easthampton, our housing prices are rising. And while we are not alone, this disproportionately affects Western Mass. According to a study released in July by Up for Growth, Massachusetts needs another 108,000 units to meet demand. And we rank 11th among the states in housing under production. Here in Western Mass, according to a UMass Donahue report issued in March of 2022, the Pioneer Valley needs at least 17,000 more rental units at or below $500 a month, and Hampshire County currently needs over 1,500 additional rental units below $1,000 a month. Although we have lower incomes than the rest of the state, we do not necessarily have lower housing prices, according to this report. In fact, 1 in 6 of all apartments in the Commonwealth that are financially out of reach are located here in the Pioneer Valley. And there's a solution to this problem, and that is to build more housing at all income levels, including for our lowest income residents. And fortunately for us, we have a project before us that would do just that. The first phase of the project includes 44 affordable units for households earning less than 80% of the area median income, which is $75,300 for a household of 4. We also have dedicated leadership in Easthampton that expanded our Chapter 40R growth district in May to include these parcels on Northampton Street. Chapter 40R encourages municipalities to zone for denser developments in smart growth locations and provides incentive payments when districts are created and bonus payments per unit when developments receive building permits. A companion law, Chapter 40S, provides state reimbursement for school costs not covered by taxes generated by 40R projects. So not only will this project pay taxes to the city, but we will also receive payments from the state. It's worth noting that the only way the city can provide additional services in the future is through taxpayer dollars or new tax revenue. Limiting areas that can be used for development reduces new tax revenues and would require the city to rely on taxpayer dollars to do things like preserve land or provide new services. I'd also like to address the issue of character and the comments that this project doesn't look like Easthampton. We often hear these comments when new development and particularly new affordable housing developments are proposed. As I mentioned, this particular part of the city has been specifically zoned for this type of use. And Northampton Street currently has apartment buildings, restaurants, and commercial buildings, not unlike what the developer is proposing. But using the phrase, "this doesn't fit into the character of Easthampton," can mean other things. It can be a socially acceptable way to oppose development, or it can be disguised as a way of saying that we don't want people of diverse backgrounds or income levels to move into our community. I do not know the intent of the people who have used that term, but the impact of those words at best is that Easthampton is perceived as a city that does not value growth and diversity of race, ethnicity, or income. At worst, it's used as a reason to reject developments like this, exacerbating the housing crisis, keeping Easthampton unaffordable to low-income households,
and maintaining our status quo when it comes to race and diversity. My purpose in bringing this to our attention tonight is so that we can all be more aware of the impact of our words, especially for those households who might be asking themselves why they would change the character of a community just by living in an apartment like the ones proposed at Sierra Vista Commons. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, gentlemen. Next up.
Hi there. My name's Tamara Saraki, live at 140 Union Street in Westfield, but born and raised here in Easthampton, my whole life on Crestview. My grandparents are on Plain Street, been involved with the city since I was at Young World myself. I've worked at Young World and Our Lady Center in Easthampton. So I'm coming from both a daycare perspective and a parent perspective. I am a mother and I have a very large family. Just a point of view, an issue that's always brought up with friends and families is that there's never enough childcare centers in this area. It's one reason why my son is at Roots in Westfield for convenience wise, because Our Ladies and here daycares that come and go that aren't lasting on Northampton Street, we can't provide the upcoming families that are coming to this area. Easthampton is now the new Northampton in that sense, and we need to have more opportunities. We're not forgetting about the older community here. Like, everybody has those memories from TC Tops. Like, we love and support this area, and it means a lot. And I think that's why there's so many big feelings for this area. But I have nothing but positive goals and excitement for this project. I really think there needs to be another daycare, especially in this area. Easthampton is a very large community-based center with things that happen around the holidays, and Roots is something that is like that too. There's a lot of events that go around during holiday times with Halloween and Christmas, and I think it would be great to expand all those different directions in town more with Rag Shag or Christmas stuff with the Grinch and involvement. I know there's a lot of issues, especially with me being raised in the plains. There's not much spot for wildlife, yes, but especially with all the deer population and all of that. But just from my perspective, I don't know with like planning issues, but is there like any way to add growth in that swamp area so like we can utilize the land appropriately or have different outlets towards Ferry Street and use that rotary that just got put into place and have more traffic flow on that end too? I don't know, like with planning and how much land is available, but that would incorporate with the bike path and having more availability for safe walking and having people go from one end to the other in the city in short distance of time without using cars. And I think that's what we're looking for, is having more opportunities to go to Valley Co-op or go down the street in different directions and not have it all at the main rotary in town in that traffic spot. Because yes, a lot of the older community lives there. They don't want to see traffic all the time. But for me as a parent as well, who my son's in swim and gymnastics, the traffic flow, even if 30, 40 parents are in the parking lot for huge events, it's quick. And I know with traffic lights, like, it can be solved. So it's just something to consider. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, I think we're going to take a few more because we do have another item on the agenda tonight, and we are going to have at least one more meeting on this. But let's take one more online and then maybe one more in the room.
Yep, Kyle McQuaid, you're up next.
Yep, thank you. Hi, I'm Kym Jamrog McQuaid. I live at 8 Jones Drive. I'm a lifelong resident of Easthampton, a member of the Easthampton Affordable and Fair Housing Partnership, and the coordinator for the Easthampton Housing Coalition. I'm here again to speak in support of this proposed development that could bring much needed housing to our community, as well as other amenities that other people have spoken so well to. I understand the residents' concerns about traffic and community impacts, but I also want to point out that as far as I've heard, this project could actually help raise the priority for the Route 10 improvements with Mass DOT. So that sounds like something that people should be aware of. That being said, I also think it's important, in response to what I'm sure are well-meaning comments from the community members, to bring light to like the problematic connotation of using certain words and phrases when discussing projects like this. When we shy away from using data and instead rely on words like neighborhood character to express opposition to affordable housing, it perpetuates harmful stereotypes and stigma surrounding affordable housing and its potential residents. Additionally, coming from a community that is so predominantly white, it makes many people who don't fit in that category feel less welcome in the community. Easthampton's population is projected to decline, and its household demographics are changing, and that's why we need more housing. We need to adapt to these changes if we want to best serve the needs of the community for the long term. This project is also in line with the goals set forward in the 2021 Easthampton Housing Production Plan approved by this board and the City Council. So in conclusion, I just want to thank the planning board, the developers, and the community for their hard work and participation in shaping our community and just making their voices heard. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Jesse, you're gonna be able to take us both, because
Yeah, I saw the,
who cut in front of who?
okay. We'll end with the two of you. We're gonna have another meeting. We'll be here all night.
I got bumped out of the first one because they didn't open up the thing. We had people from residents from other cities now. I'm a taxpayer in this town.
I understand. We have another item on our agenda. We have another meeting coming up in March. But we have to stop it somewhere. Sir.
Okay. My name is Tom Brown, 2 Grove Street, East Hampton. I'm a member of the Economic Development Commission. The cost of housing is out of control because we simply don't have enough of it. We want Massachusetts to be a home for all. We need to build more places to live. That's a quote from Governor Healy's inaugural address last month. The East Hampton Economic Development Commission has long advocated the need for more housing, and specifically more affordable housing here in East Hampton. The entire housing continuum is in extremely short supply. The person looking for their first apartment or for their first home, the family looking for a larger home, the older couple looking to downsize, or looking for senior housing. There are very few options for individuals and families here in East Hampton. Several projects like the condos on Loudville Road and Ferry Street, the new apartments on Cottage Street, will help with housing needs at various stages of that housing continuum, but unfortunately in only a small way. Even this project, with the possibility of 200+ apartments over the next 5 to 7 years, will only begin to alleviate the housing shortage in East Hampton. This project offering affordable housing, a gymnastics center, learning center, retail and commercial spaces checks all the boxes. The site is zoned residential and highway business. This property is zoned by the City of East Hampton for exactly what this project will deliver. The project obviously will have to go through all of the appropriate regulatory approvals to be able to proceed. And when they have met all of the required criteria, this will be a great project for East Hampton. What about traffic? State Representative Dan Carey and State Senator John Beals recently sent a letter to the State Transportation Secretary regarding a major redesign of Route 10 that is in the works. Part of their letter states, in addition to increased safety, the redesign project unlocks the full potential of Route 10 in East Hampton. The city stands ready to welcome several new businesses to the area, including a Starbucks, which will provide 15 new jobs, and a mixed-use development that includes much-needed childcare and diverse income housing. We've heard about the name, Sierra Vista. I think if a person is willing to invest $25 to $30 million in a project in our city,
he should be able to name it after his daughter. What about the character of Easthampton? I've only lived in Easthampton for 60 years. And in that time, there have been a lot of changes. In the 60s, there was virtually nothing in the southern section of town. Today, there are hundreds of homes with families in vibrant neighborhoods. There used to be department stores and furniture stores downtown. Today, there are boutique shops and performance spaces and a great variety of restaurants. There was J.P. Stevens, Easthampton Dye Works, Stan Home, Kellogg Brush, Lesnow's, and Paragon Rubber. Today, we have Riverside Industries, the artisans at 1 Cottage Street. We have Eastworks, Paragon Arts, Mill 180, and Millside Park. These locations all offer a great mix of entertainment venues, housing, and artist spaces. This project will not change the character of our city. It will add to the character. Has the character of Easthampton changed in 60 years? Absolutely. Has it changed for the better? I would like to think so. Will it continue to change in the future? I hope so. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, Jim Nelson again, 25 Highland Ave. I just want to go back real quick to the traffic. We're not the new study, but this property was originally advertised as seeing being exposed to 15,000 vehicles per day. Stop and Shop's traffic study that they did in 2010, it's going to increase to 3,000 to 4,000 cars a day. That's 19, probably 20,000 cars per day on that 2-lane stretch of road. Thus, Mass DOT or this city is planning on implementing eminent domain and pushing structures back 15 feet. It's not going to work. And is the city and the state really going to take up that fight? Because some of those structures are right on top of the road. That stretch of road cannot handle this size of a project. The comments earlier from out-of-towners about daycare, that's all well and good. There's daycare that can go up anywhere here in town. I know the hot button issue in City Hall is affordable housing. If you think that this is actual affordable housing, you're kidding yourselves and you're not looking at the numbers themselves. The developers themselves have told you it's going to be affordable housing within 15% of the median income. I heard a commenter saying that it's needed for $500 to $1,000 a month for affordable housing. That's not even coming close. None of this will be affordable. None of it. You guys aren't looking at the numbers as they are. You're just hearing hot button issues and you're going, oh, look, affordable housing. It's not going to be affordable. None of it is. You want affordable housing? You have three elementary schools that are up for development. There's affordable housing right there that the city can own, and they still own it. Could be Easthampton housing. There's affordable housing. There's a new development going up in the old Fedor project on the Southampton line. Huge parcel. Very minimal traffic impact. That's not an artery like the Route 10 corridor is. We can look to affordable housing in that area. This stretch of road cannot handle this, and Stop and Shop knew it 13 years ago. Mass DOT said that it could not handle it without expanding the road and adding a traffic light to meet it. Can't do this. It's not feasible. This directly affects the people that live in the neighborhoods on either side of this. This is going in my front yard. It's going in my neighbor's backyard. Getting through that stretch of road now, it's impossible during rush hour. You add, say it's 400 cars at a time. At that little intersection, good luck. When it comes to EMS response, Easthampton Fire's main hospital is Cooley Dickinson. Getting down that stretch of road right now with an ambulance, even lights and sirens, is difficult. You add this much more congestion, it will be near impossible to have to seek alternate routes. That might be you in the back of that ambulance. That could be your mother. Is that really what we want? I agree. The TC top parcel can be developed, but responsibly. It should be just that parcel where the driving range was. The other parcel shouldn't be developed. It is grade A farmland. Does the planning board talk to the Conservation Commission at all? Is the planning board aware that the developer is still not in compliance with an order from the Conservation Commission? And they were not as of the January 23rd meeting. They are still not, because they're ignoring it. That is what we're dealing with. They want to get this project done of hell or high water. It doesn't matter how it affects the surrounding communities or the community at whole. The streets abutting this are going to suffer from this, and people who live on the other side of town or out of town, like we've heard from tonight, aren't going to feel any of these impacts. We pay our taxes here. As you can see from the room and the online comments, there's overwhelming opposition to this, from the abutters to this project. I don't understand what else the planning board has to hear. This directly affects us. We live there. We don't want this. It is too much. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, folks, so as we said, we are going to vote to continue this to the 21st. Of March, yes. And we will have other opportunity for public comment. I'm sorry, I had to.
Can I get the first one next time?
If you show up early and get in line, I am sorry.
Can I guarantee that I can be number one?
No, you can't.
Because I got shut off of being the last one, the first meeting.
I'm sorry. So folks, but also you can continue to submit written comments. Those have been very helpful for the board. I mean, I got to tell you, most of the time we're in these meetings with a handful of people and we feel like we're in a vacuum, and these long nights are actually nice for us because we don't want to be making these decisions in a vacuum. So the more input people have, the better, and we really do appreciate that. And it is also being forwarded on to the applicant, and I think they've done a good job of addressing those things, or at least acknowledging that they're getting it and they're working towards it. So I want to encourage people to keep submitting, comments in writing as well, especially because we have a chunk of time here before we'll be back in person. So we really do appreciate that, and feel free to keep submitting comments.
Confirm, you said March 13th?
March 21st.
21st, and was it 6 o'clock? Is that the first thing on the agenda?
You don't have anything yet, so this will go first.
I motion to continue the pacing of the project March 21st to 6.
All right, we're going to continue to March 21st. All those in favor? Aye. Very unmute so I can hear you. Raise your hand to vote aye. Thank you. All right. Thank you. Thank you. 21st. We do have one other item coming up. So I think what we're going to do for the people for the next one, we're going to take a quick 2-minute break while people leave and get started on the next one. All right. Thank you.
Please don't stop and have conversations.
Yeah.
She was great, but don't for
Yeah.
she was is that your set the tables? Kind of. Yeah, that's my ex-wife was so she ran it and my daughter went there. So she kind of started the whole Brooks thing.
Okay.
And and got her whole team on ride.
Oh, awesome.
And she became more of a national ranked contest. Yeah. So it's actually ranked, I think that's one. So it's an Olympic level gymnastics.
Remember, all the mics are on.
And so my daughter.
You got that? Sure, all the mics are on. Okay. Still recording.
Yeah, very, very. No, thank you.
Does she know?
Yes. She recently, she got her acceptance. Yeah, this one, she's gonna be an emergency doctor. Or for her house.
That's awesome. I did have other person have it.
early on about the and she had asked about there was years ago.
They were working on our program. But for whatever reason, the state should be the charter.
Is that something that this was kind of?
Also, it was not, but he might have
great teachers. So
we have on the road, we have one day at a time, we have that's a very high-end one here in Easthampton because you have to see the community.
I've heard that a lot, for sure. That's. Thank you very much.
I'm done now. There you go.
Yeah, probably not.
All right, Eli. All right, folks, we're gonna move on. So if you're not here for the last item, please take it outside or take a seat and listen. Eli, you all set on your end there? All right. So next up is public hearing for Center for Human Development seeking plan approval. Is someone here to speak to that? Well, has been very patient.
Yeah, hello, my name is Jim Goodwin. I'm the president and CEO of the Center for Human Development. And we had purchased the former Manchester Hardware building. Center for Human Development is an agency that's provided a variety of different kinds of behavioral health and human services for over 50 years. When we first found the site, it was clear to us that it was in a perfect spot to deliver some really needed services to the town of Easthampton, city of Easthampton. I want to reference a study done by Cooley Dickinson Hospital in 2022. They identified a need for additional mental health services in Hampshire County and in Easthampton, especially services to young people, adolescents. And this site will focus on that, services to adolescents, families, variety of therapy services, group therapy services, psychiatric services, nursing services. It will address, needs that have been identified in the schools, needs related to substance use treatment, any type of depression, anxiety treatment, trauma-informed therapy, that sort of thing. So this will become a center for children's and family services. Also, adults will be serviced there also, but there'll be a focus on children and families in this unit. We're pretty excited about it. We think we can bring something really special to the city. And the Center for Human Development has a long history of delivering these kinds of services successfully in many, many different communities.
Great, thank you very much. All right, so is someone here to walk through the plans? Tell us what we're doing?
Absolutely. For the record, my name's Kevin Brindle, project manager with Barton Judas Consulting Engineers. With me this evening is also project architect, Mr. Aldardi, and the project builder, the associated builders, Mr. Dan Dodge as well, and numerous representatives from CHD. So what I will do is, again, recognizing the patience that got us here, I will be brief in regards to reviewing. Obviously, it will be a site plan that we can go back to and interact with as well. So that would trouble Eli to load that plan for me, I would appreciate.
tradition.
There we go.
All right, so for orientation purposes, this is the same orientation as the site plan application on the plans that were submitted with that site plan application. So I'm recognizing that it's difficult to see a laser pointer on a screen, and you are likely looking at a different screen than I will say I'm looking directly ahead of me, where Union Street is left of page and Chapman Street is top of page. So for orientation purposes, like I said, or like Jim had indicated, this is the old Manchester hardware store and hardware store property. That property is just over 1 acre in overall size. So what we're looking at doing is the site previously had a little over 17,000 square feet of building that site, and over 90% of the entire site was either building or pavement. So generally a very intensively developed site. What we're looking to do here is remove all but 6,900 square feet of building, the building that you see on the corner of Chapman and Union. The rest of those buildings are currently in a stage of demolition and preparing for this application in front of you this evening. The overall parking area is also slightly reduced in overall impervious on the site. So generally speaking, there's about a 10% net reduction in overall impervious areas of the site. So speaking with the city engineer, speaking internally as well, we felt very comfortable with the fact that the overall stormwater quality on the site was improving based upon this application. So what you see again is in the gray on the center, and forgive me once again, laser pointers and televisions don't work very well. Always wrestle whether it's going to be a digital presentation. Yeah. Go back to an old easel where I can actually point things.
Or a pointing stick. We need a really long pointing stick.
So what I try to do here is also color code so I can really just reference colors. The light gray in the middle becomes the overall parking area. That parking area is very similar to the limits that you would see out there historically in regards to the hardware store. The limits of paving, that parking on the lowest side, on the south side, mimic what's out there today. The parking to the right-hand side is shortened or is reduced. You do see that green envelope on the far side of the plan. Taking advantage of installing some greenery on this site, acknowledging there was very, very little there before. And what you do see again is the existing building on the top left. That building is what we're proposing to renovate for CHD's facility. So the overall parking needs serve CHD's needs as far as their facility. It also fits in the site very, very well. Recognizing again the advantage of the existing pavement, really looking to work within that existing limit. What you also see on the page is the bottom of page will be a red or magenta line depending on your angle of the television. That magenta line becomes a retaining wall and also a screening fence on top of that retaining wall to provide additional buffers and visual buffers and physical buffers to the adjacent property owners. On that right-hand side of the page where there was that green buffer, we're introducing about a 20-foot landscaped green space with evergreen vegetation in that top right-hand corner, once again buffering the existing residential abutting properties. So to go back to stormwater, recognizing that, like I said on my initial introduction on the project, there's an overall net decrease to the post-development stormwater. So we are confident that we're meeting the intent of the cities and states stormwater regulations in regards to effectively best management practices where we can. Understanding we're also confined by a fairly significantly built up property and surrounding. So working through comments with the city engineer, those comments do speak to proposed or additional infiltration on the site, effectively introducing some additional best management practices as well as low impact development standards. We will be working through those. We are intending to perform soil excavation to determine the infiltration rates on site to see if we can better meet the intent of those regulations, see if there's even more we can do to improve the water quality being discharged on this site. So some of the talking points here again would be that we are using the existing curb cut on Union Street, working with city staff, recognizing the improvements that are upcoming on Union Street. The project team is working with city staff to integrate all work that we have to do within Union, speaking specifically the utility service connections and curb cuts. Again, looking to be party to the overall project, and that's the reason that we're here before you, looking to see how quickly we can move this project along so that the faster we get this approved, the faster we can get into construction and tie into those Union Street improvements that are coming. So you also see a connection back to Chapman. That is an existing connection. What we're looking to do is effectively restrict that access to CHD staff and users of this facility, not looking to make that a full service access out into Chapman, but recognizing it's existing, but not looking to remove it. Really looking to restrict access as best as possible.
Just with signage?
Just with signage, not looking to have a hard restriction, recognizing that emergency service vehicles really need to have that full flowing access. But really it would just be for signage to, I'll say passively suggest to users of this facility that they go back out to Union Street, it's a better point of access. Also understanding that there is a large portion of the hardware store building that is now removed. More visibility from Union. With that visibility comes additional screening opportunities, additional landscape, additional buffering opportunities. Also recognizing that the site's going to be more open, more visible to the people in the city. Understanding that we're making a sidewalk connection onto the existing city sidewalk, to the CHD facility, to the main entrance, and really looking to effectively not screen off or not barricade, but recognizing that it would be for CHD, employees and staff and visitors. So also looking to have, there is some vegetation, there's a buffer there, so that if you're on the street, you're on the street. If you're in that facility, there's also our own dedicated sidewalk network. Again, screening to neighboring properties. That's a reoccurring theme, recognizing that historically a lot of the existing buildings provided that screening. Moving forward, that screening will be provided by fencing, a solid opaque fencing, as well as interspersed with landscape plant materials where we had room and where we see fit. So just again, kind of going through my checklist as far as how we built the site plan, this application. Recognizing that this application does not rise to the need for a traffic impact statement based upon it being under the 10,000 square foot threshold and not one of the listed high trip generation uses. Once again, we feel very comfortable that the trip generation based upon CHD's needs and uses here will be consistent or below the historic hardware store use. So with that. Again, many of the notes, many of the zoning compliance items, I don't feel the need that I have to go through each one of those, recognizing the time, but obviously, be it myself and the project team are here to answer any of the questions from yourselves or the public. So thank you very much.
You go down the checklist. You go for it. I've talked to them for now.
As you wish. I'm going to start with something that isn't really on my list, just a point of curiosity. You mentioned, and we've all seen demolition underway, and you mentioned that portions are largely removed, but you also used support renovation at one point. So I'm curious, are you using the remaining cellar? What is it exactly that you're keeping, and what's going?
Since I had the opportunity to turn that over to the project architect, I'll do so.
There you go. I'm Al Nardi, the architect. This is the remaining portion that we're using. It's the newest portion of what the hardware.
So like when you go up that ramp that used to be in there, in the older section.
The rental.
Yeah, the rental.
Exactly. Well,
yeah.
There is no basement, and this is a slab on grade. The old basement used to sit here. It was leaking. It was pretty good place to go for a bath. It's one.
So the original building was somewhere like
That is-
shaped or like a flag shape that you're removing that flag piece, essentially that L-shaped piece.
The bottom of the L.
Yeah.
Bottom piece.
Yes, yeah, okay.
And we are keeping the entrances off the street and off of Chapman. And our new entrance to the facility will be here off the parking lot. And so what we're removing is really a lot of square footage that wasn't needed. And this is probably the cleanest area to work with. There's no leaky basement. Pretty open because it was an open
So
area, basically.
all materials are carted away, including
Yes.
some of the asphalt that's in the back where you're showing the drain area, and you're putting a new foundation in for that
Just for that front.
front.
Yeah, that front entrance.
So
And we worked with the historic commission. We've also retained some of the items, some of the timbers and so forth that came out of that older building. Really wasn't that historical. And we are planning to use some of those in the entrance and the lobby and some photos of what used to be there and so forth, just for a little historical note, to keep younger generations knowing what we do.
So I'd like to ask just a couple things I normally touch on now about the required number of parking spaces for your use. Jeff, do you have any kind of calculation for that at this point?
I would ask the applicant, I think, can speak to that, and then we can respond to other questions.
Is that something you're prepared to speak to at the moment?
Absolutely. Based upon the use, the required number of parking spaces would be 25. What CHD has proposed here is a total parking space count of 65. And the delta between those two really speak to CHD's experience with their other facilities, recognizing that this facility would have, employees, caregivers, patients coming and going. CHD feels strongly that 65 parking spaces would be what they would need to adequately serve this facility and the city of Easthampton. What we've tried to do is, again, mitigate that offset, recognizing that there's a decrease in overall impervious, decrease in pavement, and an improvement to the off-site stormwater. Those are usually the talking points that become concerning to us when we're proposing an increase of parking that significant above the requirement. But again, CHD has a number of facilities, and they feel very strongly that 65 parking spaces really is what is necessary to make this location thrive.
It looks like you got a multiple, I guess, offices or rooms sort of fit in there. Like it's a pretty good use of space. It seems like there's more in there than you might expect for a building of that size.
Yeah. And just to add, this site actually does slope.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you about the slope. It goes way downhill.
It sort of slopes downhill. But so they're expecting to have their employees parking down here. Because the people are coming for an appointment. So they're gonna come in.
Park as close to the door as they can.
Exactly. Yeah, that's where they're gonna want to be, and it makes more sense. So that was the reason for just thinking, okay, let's make sure that it's easy for everyone, especially on a snow day. Yeah. That kind of thing.
So that leads to another question we get to is snow removal, especially with the slope. Does that create any issues you guys have for how you plan on doing that?
No, snow removal really lends itself very well on this site based upon that green space in the back. You see those locations. Again, green space is 20 feet from the property line. And then I've also set the landscape buffers far enough off edge of pavement so that there's snow storage, recognizing that there's open drive aisles with a defined path front to back. So it becomes, I'll say, as easy as possible, and recognizing that we also do have those interior landscape islands per the city's requirements. And to also handle some of the stormwater, those islands, let's be honest, nobody that drives a plow likes to see those islands. So I'll say it's as easy as possible, recognizing it's a straight shot off a Union to get back into that open landscape area in the back. So really design this as best we can for that snow removal. Understanding it's the middle of February and it feels like spring out there. So if we ever get snow again, it will be well designed for that.
Great. What about lighting?
Lighting. There are light poles shown on the 3 islands center to the parking lot. Those light poles are designed to be the 15-foot maximum height city standards. Also understanding that we've also added notes to the plan indicating that they would not believe, I believe it would be the specific reference, and forgive me, I wrote this down as I was going, no direct light beyond the property line. So recognizing that there are some fantastic photometrics that can be done with LED lights now, the intent would be meeting all town standards with that 15-foot maximum height pole. We're also trying to minimize those poles to the interior, not showing them on the outside of the property, so nothing on the bottom of the page, nothing on the right page. Again, trying to maximize their efficiency by saying those the fixture locations will be directly over the parking spaces, and understanding there will also be lights, building mounted lights to provide access, to provide safe entry into the building. So also taking advantage of the building mounted lights to provide some sidewalk and down lights at the entrance.
Will that be just at the entrance to the parking lot, or is there going to be stuff on Union and Chapman as well on the sides of the building?
Once again, I will refer out on that one.
My name is Dan Dodge. I'm with Associated Builders. When we actually go to construction drawings in the site, with all of the green space that we have and with the building frontage, there'll be ways to creatively do lighting so that we're not illuminating it like a candle, but making it proper and safe. There is that one existing entrance on Chapman that most likely won't be used for main entry, but that'll have your standard light above the door for safety.
Yeah.
But we're not going to do any wall packs, I don't believe, along Chapman or anything, other than for safety if needed.
Yeah, the lighting needs to be focused to where you need it.
Right.
Not where you don't want it.
Right.
What are the hours?
Once again, I have a fantastic opportunity to defer out a lot of these questions because I have a team with me this evening and I don't have to answer them all myself.
Monday through Friday, it would be 9 a.m., probably 8 p.m.
Okay.
And probably some Saturday hours.
And how many employees will be there at one time?
Probably 30.
And will there be a sign on the building or?
Yes, there will be a building mounted sign. It was part of the architectural plans that were submitted as far as the application. That sign, we will go on record and say we'll be meeting all the city requirements for signage, square footage, signage area for the building mounted.
Okay, thank you.
Great question.
I'm going to ask about I think it's a retaining wall and a fence on the side there. Can you describe that just a little bit for everyone?
Absolutely. So bottom left of page, there is a retaining wall existing on site that's immediately on the property line. That retaining wall is, I'll say, a couple feet high, varying in overall height, but order of magnitude, it's a low retaining wall. What we're looking to do is, that wall is in poor condition anyway. We're removing that retaining wall, and what you see there in magenta is a new wall starting about 2.5 feet off that property line. So a little more buffer for constructability for long-term maintenance. What that wall does is begins at 2 feet high on Union Street, goes up to about halfway down that wall, goes up to a total of about 7 feet in overall height, and then tapers back down to 4.5 to 5 feet. Now, for reference, there is an existing wall on site at that midpoint where we're proposing 7. There's already a wall that's about 5 plus or minus overall feet high, retaining back a portion of the existing parking lot for the hardware store. That wall is again immediately on the property line. So what we're looking to do is pull everything back a couple feet again for constructability and long-term maintenance to provide access to CHD to the bottom of that wall. And recognizing again the sensitivity of the adjacent land uses, be it partially residential, what there will be is that there will be a 5-foot high fence on top of that wall to screen headlights and screen the uses. Again, recognizing that the existing hardware store, I don't want to call CHD a conflicting land use, but it's an urban commercial land use. Really taking advantage of that fence to provide those really required visual buffers to the abutting property. To the point in regards to the existing site, pitching from left page to right downhill. there's, plus or minus a 5 to 6 foot grade change over the site. Currently, what we're looking to do is create about a 4 foot grade change across that parking lot. So bringing the parking lot up through the middle portion of the site to really maximize the usability, but recognize that once we get back to that right-hand side on the green space, we're back down to existing grade. But really trying to minimize overall wall length for obvious cost-effective purposes, but also looking to see how quickly we can get back to an existing grade, more native to the site, recognizing the site's so built up, it's not, I can't very well necessarily say it's native per se, but I hope you understand where I'm headed with that.
Two last questions. Good. And we can pass it to the drainage part. No, okay. So my last two questions are, where's the trash pickup? Is it fenced in? And can you describe in more detail what plantings you're actually going to put in the back of that greenery?
Absolutely. So you will see there is, and Alan, you may need to point that dumpster pad out for me since that laser pointer is not doing me any service.
What are you pointing out?
The dumpster pad. Yes. So the dumpster pad is directly, if you pull into the facility off of Union, it is a screened fenced facility and in direct alignment with Union. So recognizing it would likely be a front load pickup. You open the gates, pick up, and then there's a traffic pattern that allows that truck to complete drive around that site. So there's no backing up, no K-turn movements. So once again, try to be as efficient as possible with that trash pickup and trash storage staging area. Understanding it's also at the furthest point away from the main entrance. Obviously, nobody wants to see the dumpster next to the main entrance of the building. So in a case like this, we're able to take advantage of it both being, geometrically ideal for trash pickup and, ideal for the overall working of the site.
Presumably this is largely just office waste.
That's all. That's all it is. It's purely office waste, no special wastes, no specific items of concern on that one. So in regards to the overall plantings, specifically, again, plant list on the plan itself, understanding that try to keep plantings throughout the site diverse, both providing, in growing season, attractive characters in regards to, flower and colors, and flower timing of the year, but recognizing that we do live in New England, also introduced some evergreen plant materials specifically to the upper right-hand corner, and then also introduce some plant materials with some variegated bark so that through the winter months, there could also be some opportunities for, attractive visibility, recognizing that you do have people, like I said earlier, with a direct visibility onto Union, so try to plant some variegated materials close to Union. Again, just one more opportunity to provide some unique.
Are those arborvitaes for the evergreens, or are they? And what height are you anticipating?
So yes, the specific one would be the emerald green arborvitaes to that rear upper corner. Again, relatively fast growing, well suited, so we can put in a 6 foot minimum growth, screen the headlights, and recognize those would be growing to 15 plus or minus feet pretty quickly. Plus or minus a foot a year, so that really taking advantage of as faster growing as evergreen as possible, recognizing we don't have a lot of square footage, so also trying to keep the overall diameter of plant materials to a minimum too. So.
Any other questions from the planning board?
Just adjacent to the two residences, you've alluded to it before, right? Their backyard, they were used to seeing kind of like a building there. It was very screened and maybe had a private feeling, but it's maybe a bit shocking for them to have so much open space and vice versa for your future clientele to kind of be facing someone's potentially their backyard while they're playing. And then you've got a 5 foot fence stated there, and you mentioned that you potentially consider some planting. Is there an opportunity to commit to maybe just putting some arborvitae there that would eventually provide some natural taller screening at this time, or is there a reason why you wouldn't? You got a 5 foot.
Would that be the area between the building where that's maintaining and the Chapman Street entrance?
Yeah, so it would be like, it looks like Christopher Michelle Thompson's property and Kevin, I'm going to say this wrong, Yeah,
You talked along there.
yeah, I would just say.
12 foot, 15 foot wall there now.
Oh, there's a wall there.
You'd tear that down evidently, right?
Yes.
I didn't see that on the.
So in that location right now, again, there is that immediate building facade that's on that property line.
Yeah.
So with that building coming down, what we're currently proposing would be a 5-foot sidewalk with that 5-foot fence immediately backside the sidewalk. The city's regulations require that fence to be 3 feet off the property line. Sure. So really, we're working with a very tight constraint there as far as the horizontal, providing that 5-foot high fence. And you know, the planners here with me are going to be able to state that language or state that regulation better than I, but I think anything above a 5-foot high fence needs to be offset from property line, the height of the fence.
Sure.
Therefore, if I went to anything higher than a 5-foot fence, I would then have to have this fence located within the sidewalk, which would then prevent the pedestrian access, you know, safe pedestrian access on the parking lot. So there's kind of a trickle down effect there where my concern is that I don't have enough horizontal room to install the plant materials. And I thought we were fairly on firm ground with that fence because it's already a solid building wall and we weren't removing vegetation in there. Therefore, I didn't feel too guilty about not reinstalling or not planting vegetation. I would just be reinstalling a fence in that location. So I hope you understand at least the thought process that went into getting us there. Yeah.
Yeah, I can tell that.
Forgive me for being a little long-winded on that one. I didn't want to get everything out of this.
That's actually much appreciated. Yeah, I used the hatching. Yeah, I thought that was a grass strip, which prompted my, it's clearly a sidewalk.
Yep.
Any other questions from planning board right now?
Your stormwater system, I'm assuming ties into the municipal system?
Yep.
Just not, okay.
Yeah, so our existing system ties into, there's an existing catch basin in that bottom right-hand corner. We're reducing the overall flow, tying into that existing basin where it goes to that.
And yeah, so it eventually gets transported off-site and it,
yes.
Okay. Yep. I just saw like the line work ended at each extent of the catch basins.
Sure.
So we talked about site lighting, and normally we request that the applicant come in with a planimetric map that shows, you know, the foot candles at the edge of the property, which you don't have. In lieu of, you know, not having to extend this if we don't have to, is there a condition we can put in to say that, you know, that they will confirm that their lighting is?
Without the photometric plan to be incorporated, I think we could just condition it, as you said, that the lighting will not leave the property.
Yeah, because I'm also a little concerned about just overall safety of it. I want to make sure that the site's lit up enough.
Well, and I think that when you're talking about the sidewalk, I mean, the sidewalk really, we can qualify by saying it won't leave the property except for safety lighting or something like that. That makes it clear.
And there will be a full set of site photometrics submitted to the building department for our development.
Yeah. Yeah, we caught it. Yeah, it's on the record.
It's been a long day. Long day.
Any other questions here? Harry, any questions from you?
No.
Any comments or questions from the public? Come up and give a name and address, and anybody who's got any comments or questions? Thank you.
Hello, my name is Kevin Sahajian. I live at 4 Chapman Ave. So I am really concerned because first of all, no one's even spoken to me about this project. I mean, like, you know, the other day plates are falling off the shelves because the building is coming down. At least I hello and kind of cool. That's first up. So now I'm nervous because I see these plans and everything, and I have zero introduction and no information. So, you know, obviously you get defensive. So I'm very concerned about the privacy we had of the 12-foot wall for, you know, 30 years. And now we're gonna have a 5-foot fence. So you're gonna have lights, you're gonna have people. I know, like, my tenants grow tons of weed back there at legal amounts, but this is a facility that, like, people can see what's going on in this backyard. So I think at least a 10-foot fence should be on that spot, at least. But I don't know if that's legally possible or if I can build it myself after. But that's my main concern.
Yeah, I mean, I don't, Jeff.
As the previous speaker was talking, I looked it up just to confirm, and I apologize if I didn't catch it or translate it out earlier, but because we're in a business district, it is allowed to go to 8 feet So fences and other enclosures shall not exceed 8 feet in height along the portion of the side lot lines between the minimum front line and rear line and along the rear line in all business in the district. So it does give an opportunity for the board to talk to the applicant about going to 8 feet. I think beyond 8 feet is a different special permit process, but within
But I
that,
mean, I think an 8-foot fence, especially if we can do, full privacy fence, that's,
Well, based on the applicant, they would seem to be restricted, and they talked about their restriction, but
yeah, I don't think they, someone can speak up, but would an 8-foot, solid fence be agreeable to the applicant, assuming your election, we said?
Yeah, presuming allowance, we have no issue with increasing that fence from the existing building over at the Chapman Street access.
Yeah.
From 5 feet to 8 feet.
And when do you see that fence going in?
As far as the overall construction timeline,
That would be part of the construction. As soon as the demolition's done, we are gonna put up a temporary fence just to secure the site. But as part of the development, once the site
Just a chain link,
is off, we
just
would
the chain link
put the
fence?
I apologize.
Just like a chain link fence? What's that?
A chain link fence with a
screening on it, right?
privacy
Okay.
screen.
Yeah.
And then once we balance off the site, we start the sidewalk and all the grades are established. We would then install the fence.
Okay. What's the overall construction timeline?
I just passed.
Probably, yes. We will hold you to the days.
4 months.
Okay.
Between 4 and 6 months, because we do have a fair amount of site work.
Yep.
And then we still have the design and engineering that is in front of it. So we probably have 2 to 3 months of design engineering and then, 4 to 5 months of construction.
So end of the fall, sometime around that, Evo?
Yeah.
Ballpark, okay. All right.
Any other questions?
8-foot privacy
Yeah,
fence?
one other quick question. If something does happen, tearing that wall down, say it hits my shed, because that's where the property line is literally you take care of it right away, right?
We would have to.
I just want that on record.
Opportunity to exchange numbers.
Yeah, might be worth.
Yeah, it might be right there.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Yeah.
Next. Name and address, please.
Yes, Rachel Roberts, the direct abutter to the east of this proposed property, proposed development. I have a series of questions. Can I directly address the?
Address them to us, you can listen and then we can let them answer.
No, if they are planning to demolish the existing chain link fence that abuts our property? And well, if they are, is there going to be some sort of solid barrier other than these arborvitae, which I know it's.
Which is, are you on the opposite side of the driveway?
Where it's the east in the corner, Rachel Keenan Roberts right there on the drawing.
Okay. So
On the right, upper right of
Top
the
right.
entrance to yours.
providing everything, they've got the,
We have a 8 maybe foot chain link fence there now that belonged to Manchester Hardware. Is that going away? Is it staying? It's unclear on the drawings.
Relying the civil engineering and.
Yeah. There is no plan to remove that portion of the chain link fence on the site.
Good, that's the right answer.
I'd be interested in having a non-permeable barrier. And I'd like confirmation that the 170-foot topographic line shown adjacent to our property is at or below the existing elevation.
The 100.
So you've got like a bioswale, pretty much right up. First of all, that area that's green in the upper right-hand corner already exists as green space. Or at least the majority of it, I would argue possibly even more than is there right now, although not in the lower portion, isn't paved. It's kind of a wild little weedy meadow at the moment. And that's being turned into a bioswale. It's got hobo lines that go from maybe 169 to 172. What's the existing elevation at the property line?
The existing grade at the property line matches what's out there today. There's no excavation on the property. So
That's not right. But my question really is, will anything be draining towards us?
No, it will not.
Okay, so there's a lot of ponding that happens in that area already, and we just want to make sure that there's no additional water coming.
There is not.
Next is the arborvitae, which I looked up that green emerald variety and they grow to 15 feet, like you say. That's going to create an opaque barrier, that doesn't exist now. That's our garden area. We have established perennials there, food that we eat. We very much are not interested in having an opaque 15-foot barrier up against the property line. I know that the requirement is for a minimum, I think, 6 feet against a residential property is going in at 5 or something, or maybe it has to be 8, being planted at 5. We would like the minimum height. Like, we're interested in visual screening, but we are very much opposed to 10 to 15-foot visual screening, especially so close. I understand that for snow removal purposes, you want the plantings closer to the property line than the parking lot. I would request that they be as short as is permissible in the zoning laws.
We never get this. It's usually bigger.
I know.
Understood.
So
You're really
this is actually,
sunlight
so,
in our house, so.
So-
we're not interested in
Yeah, move.
Yeah,
So-
move them farther away or make them shorter. but,
right, so
that
are
would
this,
really-
I assume the applicant has maybe some interest in the screening, but usually I think it's something that's being done for the neighbor, right? So I mean, I don't, what do you guys feel about, can we waive the?
Oh, I don't want no screening, but
Okay,
I don't want 15-foot screening.
gotcha,
I
okay.
want like 6 foot high, 5 foot high, that's fine, but that's
You want
major source
sunlight
of
to the
light
garden.
to our, the only part of our yard that gets light. So
Gotcha.
we don't want to lose that. In the recent high winds, there was a massive amount of dust blowing off of the construction site into our yard. We have chickens, we grow food in that corner. I saw the asbestos warning tape up around the site today. We're pretty concerned with debris. I understand you're going to be installing temporary fence with screening, so hopefully that will mitigate that. Just want to make sure that you're aware that it's a very high wind zone. It's kind of like a little Venturi effect corridor there, and we get whipped by everything off of that site. I'm really interested in making sure that that's fully mitigated, kept wet, whatever it takes to not have a repeat of what happened the other day.
Can you stop a second? So when is that fence going in, the construction fence going in?
As soon as the demolition company is phasing out, because they owe us site security. So as they're phasing out, we're putting up. So I'm gonna say within the 30 days, the wall will be down, they'll start to want to pull out, and we're gonna start building our fence. So it'll be within 30 days, that fence will be up.
Temporary fence. Okay.
For the record, there's already an existing fence that could be tarped now adjacent to our property and no concrete wall.
The fence that is going up, because we're not touching the fence on your side.
Yeah.
So right now, the fence that's going up is along your wall.
Yeah, but she said.
I want to make sure we also have screening and dust protection at our lot and the existing fence.
We could put some fabric on that.
That would be great. And I think even with fabric, because of just the velocity of wind that passes through that narrowing channel there, it's going to take more controls if you have a large, open, exposed surface of loose material. So, just be conscious that I was watching that in horror to not have a repeat. It's really difficult for me to believe that signage is going to prevent people from using the Chapman Street exit. I think that's really wishful thinking. If people will take whatever path is more convenient for them, I would love to see more effort put into restricting that access to employees or staff. If it has to be there at all, I understand there's a right of way and there's a limited effect that we can have on your ability to use it. But people drive very quickly down our street already. It's a popular cut through from Union, and additional 30 people a day potentially traveling through there seems like a really high volume, in addition to potentially clients as well. And passive signage, I think we all know, doesn't really.
Especially with work going on Union Street, there might be a narrow window in the next year when we might need more aggressive signage to discourage people from using that as their access point for the property.
It was interesting earlier to have someone pointing out that the parking lot was designed intentionally to sort of split employee parking from visitor and client parking. There may be an opportunity to make that a more definitive barrier that, encourages people to only park to the left of those center islands.
Right now, that driveway is only indicated as an exit. just because of the width. You don't have enough width for
Okay.
two-way.
Even so,
Yeah,
that's a major increase on a small residential street with a lot of neighborhood cats, kids, people on bikes. Yeah, like it's hectic as it is. People drive 50 miles an hour down that road. I don't know how they make the turn at the end, but
yeah, I
Anyway.
don't think you can probably gate it or do anything like that, but I do think that we need to be a little more aggressive on the signage.
No entry sign.
Yeah.
I mean,
It is currently gated.
Currently
It's been currently gated for 20 years. It's
Yeah.
gated.
yeah, I know even a no entry sign I think is asking a lot of people's like willpower. But outdoor lighting has been talked about a lot already. Is there a plan to turn it off entirely after working hours? I mean, we live in the city. I like living in the city. I understand there's light pollution in the city, but it's pretty minimal from the Manchester hardware. You know, and the previous owners were great about making sure all of their lights didn't point towards our yard, and they really only had one in the back of the farthest back, brick building. No lighting at all in the parking lot, really, except for up on Union Street. And if there's a light on, say, the farthest east traffic island, difficult for me to believe that's not going to spill without some really serious shading. And even so, after working hours, if your site is secure, I don't know why it would be required for safety. And we really enjoy our outdoor space, including at night, and would like as minimal additional lighting spillage as possible. So a lighting plan, timers, photo cells, maybe not appropriate if you're working into 8 o'clock, but timers would be great. Also definitely like really severe shielding. And I think that might be our list. Thank you very much. And just generally speaking, I mean, I'm excited to see this site improved in terms of drainage specifically. It's pretty abysmal. I've been into the basement of the building to the south and it's a river. So this is certainly has potential to be an improvement and, hope we can be good neighbors.
thank you.
Thank you.
All very good comments. Yeah. If there's a way you can incorporate those into your design, very helpful.
Hi, I'm Cynthia Kortev Cassell, and I am at 8 Chapman Avenue. I own property there. Have owned it for 21 years and lived there part of that time, but I'm now living in Williamsburg, but we have renters there. I would like to speak to several different things. First of all, the communication process. When the property was purchased, I actually reached out to you, Jim. I believe I spoke to you on the phone because I wanted to find out about the shared driveway that we own, part of. And I called about plowing because our plows currently, there's a gate. The gate has been locked for about 20 years. It was open maybe once when Union Street was closed for construction. And so Carol, the former Manchester owner, we spoke, and she said, sure, can we use the gate? We'd like to do that. We opened it. They had traffic moving through there for like a little while. And then, anyway, we spoke on the phone and we just continued to plow as we usually do into the gate as a barrier for snow. No one contacted me since then about any of this, about the use of the driveway as staff parking for 30 different employees coming and going, open till 8 o'clock at night. There are children that live in the house at 8 Chapman Avenue. And I don't know if you can see right there on that picture. There's not even like a foot of space between the driveway and the porch and also the house on the left. There's no room. It's basically driveway. So it's dangerous to have cars moving through that till 8 o'clock at night. And on Saturdays, the parking area for my tenants and for me when I go there is on that spot of lot that we own that's on the driveway. So we have cars that are parked there in that road all the time. People park there. People park there for snow emergencies.
Is this a shared driveway?
We own part of the driveway.
So you can see the
We own part of it and we have an easement for the other portion that we own.
But they
So
just measured
you
it.
can park, what they show is a full driveway. Half that is the parking for our building that we own.
So just to point out, like these spots right here, this is our tenant parking or our parking lot right here. And we have an easement here, and when we bought the property, I can go back into the history of it, we bought it 21 years ago, and Carol, the owner of Manchester, said she wanted it to keep an easement because there may be times when Union Street is under construction, and that was her main concern. So she left the gate locked, she wrote an easement, which we agreed to. It said there would be, it's in the deed, and it says there's allowed use time to time for that road, that driveway, time to time. I don't know how you legally quantify time to time, but that's in the deed. But I don't think that means that staff is going to be using the driveway every day, 30 different people, 6 days a week. So I am furious that no one contacted me about this. First of all, I think that does not make good neighbors. Second of all, I don't understand why you're pushing this through as fast as you can without really researching what's happening in our neighborhood. I think that a mental health facility opens up a lot of potential. I don't know what potential problems, but I would like to have a study done on what potential problems could be opened up by a mental health facility in a neighborhood where you're removing the barriers between residential properties and the parking area, and you're putting up some green space. But I know that in other other mental health facilities, there are people who linger outside. They're waiting for services. Their families are waiting for them. They're needing bathrooms. They're doing things like, I don't know what all things they might be doing, but they're going to try and find little cozy spots in the greenery potentially to be doing those things. I just worry about it. Has there been any study on this? I don't know, but they said they're trying to push this through quickly, and I would like to know why. Without talking to their neighbors, they would want to be pushing this through. It feels like a big corporation trying to push through something without speaking to the neighbors. And I'm just not feeling comfortable with it. So snow removal is an issue. If we do have people parking on that potential, on our property, I don't know how we're going to have a snow removal happening there with cars. Are they going to go around the cars that are parked on the driveway in order to allow their staff to get in and out? So just something to be aware of. I wanted to bring up safety. There are kids who do live at Chapman Avenue right now, 8 Chapman. There's this 5-year-old child living on the first floor. It just frightens me to think that staff's just going to be driving through there as a road with people parking there, our tenants parking there, and kids coming out of their cars, not expecting for somebody to be driving through there. It's not much room. It's 10 feet. It's a 20-foot wide driveway, which means we have 10 feet of it that we own. So if cars are parking there, that leaves 10 feet for vehicles to be
That's not the
passing.
property line, that's the next building.
Yeah.
There's
no
the next
room.
building is on the property line essentially.
You can see the house, right up next to the driveway. So there's not room for emergency vehicles. They stated need to be using that. I don't know how emergency vehicles are going to be expected to use that egress. I also don't know why they couldn't just use the Union Street entrance and leave that gated. I feel strongly that's what should happen. I'm not opposed to a facility being put there as long as the research is done and people's considerations are being communicated. Let's see, what else did I have? Oh yeah, they're removing the fence that was behind 8 Chapman Avenue. So again, that means it's basically an open walkway for anybody who wants to just walk through the yard or the driveway to just walk through there if the fence is gone. So I don't know where you're going to be, if you're moving the chain link fence that now is between where the driveway is and the parking lot, is there going to be a fence there at all? You said, it's unclear to me what fence is being put in and what fence is being removed. I know this gate in the plans, the gate there is being removed. There's now a fence right here. Is that going to be gone?
No, it will remain.
This fence will remain. Okay, so just the gate is being talked about being. Okay.
That is correct.
Okay.
And I can speak to the access as well, but I don't want to interrupt if you've got more comments.
Okay.
Please.
Sure. And the signage where they say, it looks like it's on our property too, the signage where
It's in the corner of our property.
it's in the corner of the property. So it just seems intrusive. Let me see. Yeah, I don't know about traffic study. You said that 25 parking spaces seemed like the amount that would be used, but you're talking about 30 employees, so that's confusing to me. Why you need only 25 parking?
There's 65 on the plan.
I know, but then when Jim was talking, he said, or someone was talking, they said they imagined it to be.
It's based on the zoning ordinance, based on the use that's there, and so it's often sort of a general category of use, and they're saying that based on their experience, that they would need more than that.
Yeah, because 25 and 30 employees is already up to
Right.
55.
It wouldn't be 30 at it.
Okay.
At all
Like
times.
a psychiatrist might be there for 4 hours.
Sure. Okay, let's see. Site lighting, I'm curious about the photometric plan as well, and I'm just curious around safety. Are there gonna be security cameras or any other things like that? Because I am thinking about the safety piece when we've got people living right there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything else to add?
Yeah, please.
Oh, one other thing, I just was reading the article in the Gazette, and it says, we look forward to engaging with various community stakeholders appropriately as the process unfolds. I just haven't felt that communication coming in, so I just want to make sure that you're putting them in word. Please communicate, I've been trying. Go ahead.
Hi, Alex Cassell, also in Easthampton Ave. Bad cold, so hopefully you can hear me okay. One of the things I wanted to stress was the snow removal. We had kind of a tacit understanding with previous owners that we could push snow up to the fence that was, or the gate rather, that was never used. If they remove that gate, if we are doing snow removal, we have no place to put it. Because literally, the driveway is tight to the buildings on both sides. There's zero opportunity for snow removal on our property at that point. So we came to that understanding. Unfortunately, it's not in the deed that we can put snow at that location. But it is the language of the easements that they would not be responsible for snow removal. I don't know if they want to renegotiate that to cover all snow removal, but then that becomes problematic when we have tenants, so we can't necessarily dictate when they move cars. I think it's 10 feet 8 inches between the building next to us and the pin for our driveway, or a tenant park, which also gets a lot narrower. Snow, you'd be brushing up against the building if you're 10 feet over. As far as emergency vehicle access, I'm a captain on Chesterfield Fire, a captain on Williamsburg Fire. If we really had to, we might be able to get an engine through there. But at 10-8, we might be scraping the mirrors and pushing the cars. I don't think, in a structure fire, I'm sure Easthampton Fire, they need to do to get back there, but it's not going to be a regular access for emergency vehicles. And I can't speak to what Easthampton Fire would prefer for access on that department. But, I think these are real concerns. And as my wife Cindy said, we tried to open a dialogue about these concerns a long time ago. Friendly, we're not confrontational people, but we don't appreciate that suddenly, this was on the 17th, their postcard mail with no notice. Kevin said they start taking out the building, knocking face off with walls. Does not give us much confidence in them, their ability to work with that teacher.
I'm curious, was that originally a fire road?
Fire road?
A fire road.
No, originally what it was explained to me by the previous owner, Carol, was that her father had purchased Easthampton Avenue. He wanted to be able to have deliveries come through the driveway.
Okay.
And then they weren't able to do it because the delivery truck could not actually make the swing. It was too tight. And so that's why they never used it. But that was originally when they purchased the building. And got this next thing here, but Carol got sick of dealing with tenants, so she sold the building to us. But wanted to keep.
It wasn't fire. Okay, thanks.
No, it was not fire access.
Thank you. Anybody else? Or Kevin, do you want to go back?
I just wanted to know, with the comments that have come up today, do we have some sort of the ELP addressed?
Well, so I think Kevin's going to answer some of these questions, and then we're going to make a decision about this.
And if I think people online, it hasn't been clear that you've offered people online any chance.
Just call me there. Thank you. Thank you.
Step back.
No, please, to the extent you can.
All right. Specifically, the majority of the comments that we received do speak to that access on Chapman. It is not the project team's intent to be using that as any normal access onto this site. The access will be coming and going off of Union. That access is purely that we have it, and there was a long discussion about what we do with it and what the best use for it is. We determined that a restriction on that to quote restricted access to provide, access to emergency vehicles would be the most prudent way to approach what we already have access out on the Chapman for. But I'm confident that we built this application around accessing purely off the Union. And if there is, additional restrictions necessary to appease the abutters as far as that access out of the Chapman, project team here is very comfortable with those restrictions. As noted, it's gated today. Our concern was if we maintain it as gated, there would be, a conversation to be had in regards to public safety once we go through the building permit application process. So, but we would be comfortable on the record to say, as long as we're meeting the needs and requirements from city staff in regards to providing safe and secure access for emergency services, we're comfortable restricting that as much as necessary to make the abutting properties owners comfortable, because we have no intention of staff or visitors using that Chapman Street access on any routine or any regular basis.
So it seems, I think that most of what these neighbors have talked about seem like pretty reasonable things. And I think you guys have been pretty amenable to it. What I would suggest is that we bump this out, hopefully for something where we are literally just getting together to vote on a decision that everyone in this room is happy with. Because I don't think, the only issue here that's a wrinkle is the shared driveway, which it sounds like you don't care about. And I personally don't think it's necessary to the project. So I would hope that if we put this out to our next meeting and people can talk, and even the things that we've just talked about tonight and agreed to, we can put in the plans and put in an application so that we know exactly what's going to be in there. And if the road is gated or however you guys want to deal with that, I don't think that's a necessary ingress or egress as far as the site plan is from our perspective. But this seems like pretty low hanging fruit that, sometimes it's not uncommon that you don't get a chance to sit down and talk until everyone gets into this room. And so I think that this might just be the way everybody just made a new friend with their neighbor. And maybe we can figure out the easiest way amongst all of you to work through those issues before we get to another hearing.
Yeah, I agree. I wouldn't feel comfortable voting tonight, especially knowing, that there's work to be done with the neighbors. And I think it's important for you to take the next couple of weeks to talk to them, make sure the concerns are addressed, come back with an updated plan, and also add the photometric. That would be helpful for me to know exactly how that lighting is going to work. And
even formalize the things that have sort of been informally agreed to already tonight. I think that would be helpful so that neighbors have something to rely on going forward. I think that's probably the easiest way. Before I forget what Jeff said, anybody online with any comments or questions regarding this application? All right, Jeff, comment?
Could I offer, just for example, the board's next regular scheduled meeting is February 28th.
Mm-hmm.
That in theory gives the applicant some time to consult with the fire department. Mm-hmm. We've seen a variety of different mechanisms. So a gate with a Knox box or removable bollards is another option that has been deployed in other situations. I think it's pretty easy for the applicant I can help connect you to the fire department. It would be great for you to understand what they would like to see and then potentially report back, maybe to your neighbors and to the board. The only other thing that's really related to there's maybe not the only thing, related to the access was this clarification of snow removal might be worthwhile to understand how you might navigate that with the adjacent property owner on the access way. We heard the request for a taller fence. So that could be depicted on a site plan, some questions about the nature and height of the landscaping and the photometric plan. That's not an overwhelming list of things that could come back to the next meeting. And, as the staff people, what we heard is there was a study about the use. That was something that maybe we should discuss, but everything else was something that could be brought back for the board's consideration at the next meeting. It's pretty straightforward items.
I completely agree with everything you said, and I'm really happy to see that information come back. But I will say the one thing about the study about the use that made me feel a little bit uncomfortable personally. And I think the intent is really good in terms of understanding the wall height and all the other components. But maybe I misinterpreted it, but it almost sounded to me like trying to understand the behavior of types of people, and that seems like it's outside of the purview. Or it makes me feel uncomfortable.
I'm sorry, Ms. Finn, can I ask about that? So I recognize that mental health services is an important thing. We know people who have had mental health services near their properties, and they've had problems with people who would urinate on their walls and using drugs and things like that. And I know this is very much a not my backyard argument, to say it's valid, but not here. That's why we just like to hear it addressed. Not saying
Yeah, and I think the relevant part is the part about, the number of people that are there, the potential for people to be loitering, just like it would be if it was a Dollar General or any other use that might lend itself to people being in a downtown business area. And I think the issues with screening and traffic are legitimate, again, not for the type of use, but for the level of use. I think that's something that we can consider. I think things beyond that are, it goes down a dangerous path, as James has said, but I also think if you're having stuff like that, it's, an issue for police, it's an issue for security, things like that. Like, I don't think that we can just assume that that's what mental health facility is gonna bring with it. I think that's...
Sure, I'm not saying I assume that.
No, I know.
Yeah, that's fine.
No, I'm saying, I don't think
question to see, if there's, things like security cameras, if people are, hiding around a corner.
Right, so the security cameras were addressed, the screening, I think all these are things that you guys can talk to the applicant about and figure out sort of what makes people safe. And maybe what we come back with at the next meeting is we agreed to this 80%, we can't cross this finish line, and that's what we're here for. We'll figure out what the solution will be, but I think it's always better, you folks, you're all the people that are most invested in this room. So I think everybody wants this done in the best and safest and cleanest way possible. Yes, sir.
Yeah, as the architect, I hear a lot of good things. I hear exactly that everyone abutting each other can handle and come up with the compromise. But the one thing that I would advise against that I heard would be not advisable, all lights off after a certain time. And then you are going to have a problem. And I can see lights dimmed down.
Well, I think that's fine. I also think it sounded like, the light that might be the most offensive might be that one that's furthest down there. Maybe that one shuts off at night. I think you guys can work out the details of that, because I think, if the lighting thing is always, it's kind of like the way parking has become, right? Like in some times it's the thing you want the most of, and other times you're paving over a field, right? Like the lighting, everyone wants it lit enough to be safe, but we also want dark skies. And so that I think, again, the people that we most impacted by that are going to be everyone in this room. It's your property, it's your skyline, it's all of that. So I think my hope is we do have an extra week too until our next meeting on the 28th. So I would suggest that we continue that and you guys have more conversations in the meantime, because I think this should be doable.
I'll just add to,
yes.
Cameras are 10 times more effective with signs that say there are cameras. I just want to know that.
Sometimes the sign is like,
I definitely leave it at that. But even just knowing that you're on camera deters a lot of behavior.
Yeah.
I agree. I was just going to build on that and maybe make a suggestion to the applicant, which is that for other uses, a management plan, some kind of document which kind of gives a summary of the measures that you are considering employing. So whether you will deploy cameras might be useful information. It would be curious to know what would your response be to after hours situations, whether it would be strictly related to relying on the police department or whether there would be any line of communication between the police department and someone at CHD. I think a little bit of that information is common to get an overview of what an applicant will be doing and provide to the planning board, just so they understand what some of the mechanisms would be, and then maybe reaching out to the neighbors would be sort of extra thing that you guys could do. Thinking about the lights dimming versus on and off would be great to have an understanding of what CHD is willing to do and the plan coming back. So
perfect. And I think we can probably prepare a draft decision before the next meeting, so that assuming, I don't think there's anything here we can't make a decision on. Frankly, people can't decide on it at the next meeting anyway. So I think we can, hopefully at least get it wrapped up on the 28th. But thank you all for
Thank you very much.
being cooperative and continuing to talk. So I will take a motion.
I motion to continue the Center for Human Development to February the 10th at 6 o'clock.
A second.
All right, voting to continue to the 28th. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All right, folks, we'll see you all on the 28th. Thank you so much.
Take care. Thanks for your time, guys.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.